Okay, smarty pants, answer this one. Do you know what earthquake magnitudes actually feel like? Well, at magnitude 1, you wouldn't notice a thing. At 3, you might slosh your coffee if you're drinking. At 5, things can start to shake off shelves, and it definitely gets your heart racing. But at 7.5, that's when the ground itself rips, buildings sway, and whole streets can split. And now, scientists warn a fault we thought wasn't active anymore could unleash something that strong under a small sleepy town in Canada. Now, if you trace your finger across a map of northwestern Canada, you'll find Dawson City in the Yukon. It looks like a nice place to escape from civilization. After all, it only has about 1,600 residents. It's quiet, remote, and famous for its gold rush past. In the late 1890s, Dawson City ballooned into a boomtown almost overnight as prospectors chased gold. Today, the rush is long gone, but the town still looks the part. Wooden boardwalks and saloon-style facades give it the feel of a set straight out of a Western movie. Oh, and beneath all of that is a fracture in the earth itself. Dawson City is located on top of what's known as the Tintina Fault. It's a massive crack in the Earth's crust that stretches for hundreds of miles toward Alaska. Until recently, scientists believed that this zone had been inactive for over 40 million years. But newer studies tell a different story. Just a quick reminder, faults are giant cracks when two slabs of Earth's crust meet. They're always trying to slide past each other, but their jagged edges catch and lock. Pressure builds for decades, continuously bending and straining the rock. Then, suddenly, the locked zone breaks, and the slabs slip into a new position in just seconds. That abrupt lurch releases all the stored energy, sending seismic waves racing outward. The ground-shaking consequence is called an earthquake. Scientists say the ground on each side of Tintina has been trying to slide past itself for ages, but it's stuck. And now, that stuck zone has built up around 20 feet of strain. That's how far the land would shift sideways if it all gave at once. That's not just a small crack. That's straight up something from a disaster movie. If all that built-up tension snaps in one go, the result could be a magnitude 7.5 earthquake. How strong is that? Well, pretty strong. So, what happens during a big quake? The shaking can last up to 30 seconds or more, which is an eternity when the walls are swaying and the floor feels like it's rolling under your feet. If you're near the fault, things can get really scary. The ground doesn't just shake, it could take a big step sideways. This can lead to some renovations. Roads might get a new zigzag pattern, and unreinforced buildings could decide to do the twist. And if it happens in a Canadian winter, let's just say it could turn a simple power outage into a survival horror adventure. Being on soft soil is like sitting on wobbly jelly. It amplifies the shaking. Solid rock is a bit more stable. However, it's still dangerous. For example, in Mexico in 2003, a 7.5 quake damaged over 43,000 homes, buckled roads, and cut power for miles. In Sulawesi in 2018, the same magnitude not only leveled buildings, but triggered a tsunami and liquefaction. The whole neighborhood was swallowed as the ground turned to quicksand. Now here's something interesting. Most people don't think of Canada as an earthquake country, but it actually gets around 5,000 quakes a year. However, they're so small that you'd never feel them. The real hot spot is the West Coast, near British Columbia. That's where you hear people whisper about the infamous Big One. It refers to a future megathrust earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone, a massive fault that runs for 600 miles just offshore. Unlike Tintina's sideways slip, Cascadia works by one tectonic plate shoving under another. For centuries, the North American plate has been bent upward like a spring as the Juan de Fuca plate has been diving below. When it finally snaps, that's a magnitude 9.0, more than 30 times stronger than a 7.5. We know it can happen because it already has. The last big one struck in 1700. It was so powerful, it didn't just shake the Pacific Northwest. It launched a tsunami across the ocean that smacked Japan, where villagers recorded an orphan wave with no local quake to explain it. Only later did scientists connect the dots. Now this brings us to the fact that despite all this, the size of the fault, the quiet buildup of strain, and the potential for a magnitude 7.5 earthquake, the Tectonic Fault isn't even listed on Canada's official seismic hazard map, at least for now. That means no warnings, no color-coded danger zones. And when a fault isn't on the map, nobody designs a building for it. There's no proper preparation. You don't build reinforced structures or have seismic codes, especially when people don't expect that the ground could split open. Now, to be honest, that's not someone's mistake. The fault just didn't show any signs of being active recently. And this part of Canada is really big, quiet, and doesn't have a lot of monitoring. Not until too long ago, people had thought of the Tectonic as just a geological oddity, something cool for looking at the past, but not really relevant for the future. For years, the Tectonic Fault flew under the radar, but that changed when researchers brought high-tech gear. They uncovered subtle but clear land shifts near Dawson City. They looked like scars on the landscape and pointed to past earthquakes, including one that pushed the land nearly 3,000 feet over millions of years. Now, interestingly, newer glacial features showed no signs of disruption, which means the last major quake probably happened right before the end of the last ice age. In geologic terms, that's pretty recent. When scientists lined up those land shifts with the ages of glaciers, the picture was clear. The Tectonic Fault isn't retired, it's just been on a really long coffee break, and now it's itching to clock back in. That's why researchers want it officially on Canada's seismic hazard map. Dawson City deserves more than a shrug emoji when the ground decides to stretch. The experts are basically playing detective with dirt. They're scanning forests and rivers for faint scars that past earthquakes tried to hide. They're digging trenches like archaeologists with a taste for chaos, flipping through the Earth's diary one muddy page at a time. Every crack, wrinkle, and layer adds to the story of when Tectonic last threw a tantrum and how loud the next one could be. It's pretty cool that satellites can literally track if one side of a valley is slowly creeping ahead of the other, like tectonic snail racing. The goal is to find out how often this fault snapped in the past, how much stress it's still holding on to today, and whether it's going to go off quietly or all at once. Finally, just because you know that plates are pushing against each other underneath, you still can't put a date on it. Long stretches of silence might mean the rocks are getting ready for something huge, or they could just be releasing stress in tiny ways that go unnoticed. Scientists can model possibilities, but no one has a countdown clock for the next rupture. The smartest mindset isn't prediction, it's preparation. You brace for the plausible, not the precise, because the Earth's schedule doesn't come with reminders. It turns out the Earth's crust is always fidgeting. It's just that our maps are a little behind on the gossip. A fault everyone thought was harmless might actually be sitting on a magnitude 7.5 size secret. But don't worry, this isn't a cue to panic. It's a cue to get smart. Better data, sturdier buildings, and a few just-in-case habits. When the ground finally decides to settle its debt, what really matters isn't whether Dawson City feels the shake. It's whether everyone's prepared enough to turn a potential disaster into just a real wild story to tell later. Hey, have you ever been in an earthquake? I have. Tell me your story in the comments.
Marriage is not only about happiness, mutual support, love, and friendship. Marriage is also about trials, crises, and storms. And this Swedish couple survived several storms during their honeymoon. Literally. Not screams, insults, and drama, but real hurricanes, fires, earthquakes, and other natural disasters. This is a really cinematic love story. Newlyweds against nature. Meet Erica and Stefan. They met in Stockholm while working on a joint project, parted, but started chatting with each other on social networks. Their long-distance communication lasted for several years before Stefan decided to ask the woman out on a date. And it's worth paying tribute. It wasn't a typical date in a restaurant or in a park. Stefan suggested that Erica fly with him to go diving in Egypt. They realized that they both loved to travel and finally fell in love with each other. After a fabulous wedding and the birth of a beautiful daughter, the couple decided to go on a 4-month honeymoon. The tour was impressive. From Sweden to Indonesia, then to Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and China. They didn't expect that the trip would turn out to be a real adventure where safety was not guaranteed. At first, they got stuck at Munich airport. All flights were delayed because of a severe thunderstorm. In Bali, Indonesia, they went to a high mountain with their little daughter. A strong wind began to blow at the top. It tore off the roof of the tourist bus where our heroes were sitting. Fortunately, no one was injured, and there were no other problems. But at that moment, it was just a teaser of the coming disasters. The couple arrived in Australia, where a wildfire first started near the city of Perth. Stefan and Erica didn't want to cough up thick smoke, so they quickly left for the city of Cairns. It was during that period when a ferocious cyclone began there. The storm was so strong that the Australian Red Cross Service provided shelter for 2,500 people in the mall. And there, another problem began. Imagine 2,500 people in a big, hot room without electricity while a hurricane is raging around. Oh, and there were only 5 toilets in the entire building. How nervous do you think people were? Eric and Stefan recall that some guys started fighting because of stress. The tension was getting stronger, but fortunately, the mall guards kept the situation under control. Wildfires, hurricanes, it seems that something is missing. Oh yes, what about an earthquake? The couple faced 2 earthquakes during their honeymoon, one of which happened in Japan in 2011. They went through all this together with their little daughter. Just imagine how their daughter was amazed by all these adventures. Such a trip strengthened their marriage. Of course, after natural disasters, any domestic quarrel would seem like a mere trifle. Erica admitted that in crisis situations, Stefan fully justified her trust and behaved as she had hoped. Oh, how sweet. What if we create tours for married couples who are planning to divorce? Survive the storm, fire, earthquake, and flood together, and then think again whether you should leave each other. Imagine that you've gone through several natural disasters in your entire life. Now the question is, are you lucky because you've survived, or are you an unlucky person because you've run into such troubles? It depends on how you feel about it. For example, there's a woman, Dana Weiland, who lives in California. She has survived several disasters throughout her life and continues to smile. And more recently, she's faced another disaster, wildfires in her home state. But let's take it in order. In 2005, Dana Weiland lived in New Orleans, and if anyone doesn't know, that year, Hurricane Katrina destroyed many houses in this and other cities. Dana's house was no exception. According to her, the lower floor of the house was completely flooded with water. Of course, she had to give up everything and evacuate. Dana and her family drove to Texas to a friend's place for about 20 hours. 1 month later, Hurricane Rita arrived there, and Dana and her family evacuated again. It looked as if nature was following her around, but our heroine was not one of the timid ones. Several years later, she faced another disaster, Snowmageddon. This was when a huge amount of wet, cold snow flooded cities and roads. Strong wind, blizzard, and endless snowfall. All traffic stopped. The lights turned off. The streets were empty. Dana sat for 11 days without electricity during this snow apocalypse. And after all these disasters, she got the exact opposite of snow. Wildfires in her hometown of Lake Arrowhead in San Bernardino County. Let's hope that this time, everything will be fine with her again, and she will meet any adversity with a smile on her face. Have you heard that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place? Can it hit the same person twice? What if it strikes the same guy 7 times in a few hours? This is not a movie plot in a tragicomedy genre. This is the real story of Roy Sullivan, a man who got into the Guinness Book of Records for the number of lightning strikes survived. There are more than 8 million lightning strikes on Earth every day, which is about 100 strikes per second. But even so, the probability of getting struck is extremely low, 1 chance in 10 million. For Roy Sullivan, these chances were too high. For his strange record, people nicknamed him the human lightning rod. For the first time, lightning struck him in 1942, when Roy was on a watchtower that didn't have a lightning rod. A bright flash of light and a powerful current discharge scarred the man, but didn't cause crucial damage to health. The next accident occurred in 1969, when lightning struck a tree near the road. The lightning passed through the tree to a car. Guess who was driving this vehicle? Roy lost control and almost drove off a cliff. Fortunately, he stayed alive again. Okay, the first time he was on the tower during a thunderstorm. The second time was on the road next to a tree, and as we know, lightning often strikes trees. This meant Roy was in a potential risk area every time. But the third time happened in his front yard. Lightning struck the transformer and caught his shoulder. The fourth time happened in 1972. Lightning struck Roy while he was working. From that moment on, the man began to suspect that this natural phenomenon was somehow attracted to his body. Maybe it was a curse, or maybe everything could be explained from a scientific point of view. A year later, lightning struck him for the 5th time. A thunderstorm started that day. Roy decided not to try his luck again and hid in his truck. And so, when the storm calmed down, Sullivan got out of the car and bam! Another lightning strike. There were 2 times left before the record. They occurred in 1976 and in 1977. Roy's bad luck spread to his wife. One day, lightning struck her too. It didn't hurt her, but scared a lot. So far, no one has broken Ray's record, but obviously people haven't tried to do that. Okay, lightning, fires, snowstorms, hurricanes, and earthquakes. But how about tsunamis? Unfortunately, this is one of the most terrible and devastating disasters on the planet. If you survived it, you're definitely lucky. Zarul Fuadi from Indonesia survived these devastating water disasters twice. The first occurred in Indonesia in 2004. And the second happened a few years later during an earthquake in Japan. During the second time, Zarul was in the building on the 3rd floor and felt a jolt. He was shocked and immediately remembered the tsunami he had experienced before. The tsunami hit the city, but our hero and his family survived. After this double trouble, he decided to move to his homeland, Indonesia. Despite the terrible events, Zarul looks at what happened calmly. Any catastrophe can happen to any person at any moment, but it doesn't mean you should live in fear forever. So, he focused on the bright side of life.
Before an earthquake shakes the ground, something sneaky might happen first. A slow, quiet movement with no shaking at all. No one is aware that right under their feet, the land is preparing to tremble violently, wreaking havoc, bringing destruction and devastation. A new study shows that such a slow creep might be how earthquakes begin. To figure this out, scientists didn't start with giant pieces of the earth. Instead, they went into a lab and used clear plastic sheets called plexiglass. They pushed 2 sheets of plexiglass sideways against each other, just like how tectonic plates, huge chunks of Earth's crust, push against each other underground. As they pushed, the plastic cracked, kind of like what the Earth does during an earthquake. And even though it was plastic and not rock, the physics, the way things break and move, was the same. Earthquakes happen when 2 tectonic plates try to slide past each other, but they get stuck. The edges between them don't move easily because of something called friction. It's kind of like when your shoes grip the ground. Over time, the plates keep trying to move and stress builds up. Think of it like bending a stick. At first, it doesn't break, but if you keep pushing, it will eventually snap. The spot where the plates are stuck is called a fault, and there's a thin brittle part in that fault. By brittle, I mean that it doesn't bend, it just breaks. Here's how it happens. First, a tiny crack forms. It's small and moves slowly. There's no shaking yet, but something is already happening under the surface. The crack spreads, building up more energy. When it finally reaches the edge of the brittle zone, boom! It speeds up, suddenly racing forward really fast. almost as fast as sound, and that's when the Earth starts to shake. So scientists decided to find out how that very first crack starts. They conducted their experiment, whose setup was similar to a type of fault in the real world called a strike-slip fault, like the San Andreas Fault in California. Even though the materials, plastic versus rock, are different, the way cracks form and move is exactly the same. The experiment has helped scientists understand that earthquakes don't always start suddenly. Sometimes there's a slow, quiet start, like a warning sign before the big quake. This early stage of an earthquake is called a nucleation front. It's like a seed of a crack, gently creeping through the material long before any actual rupture happens. This quiet and slow movement doesn't release energy into the surroundings. At first, scientists thought of cracks as simple one-dimensional lines, like a straight tear in paper. But something didn't add up. The slow-moving nucleation front wasn't behaving like a normal fast-moving crack, and it wasn't clear why or how it suddenly sped up and became an earthquake. The answer came when scientists realized they had to think in two dimensions instead of one. Instead of imagining the crack as just a fine line, they began to think of it as a patch, like a growing circle, that starts at the surface where two materials touch. As this patch spreads out, more material along its edge has to break. The important thing here is that the energy needed to break the material is related to how long the patch's edge or perimeter becomes. The bigger the perimeter, the more energy it takes to keep breaking. That's why this patch moves slowly at first. It doesn't yet cause the violent shaking we associate with an earthquake. Because it moves without sending shaking waves, this stage is called aseismic. Eventually, the growing crack patch spreads beyond the special brittle zone, where the materials are stuck. Outside this zone, the energy needed to keep breaking the material doesn't increase anymore. Instead, there's now extra energy building up, more than what's needed to keep the crack growing slowly. This extra energy doesn't stay quiet. It suddenly powers the crack to move much faster, turning it into a full-speed rupture. That's the moment when the earthquake begins and the ground starts to shake. These findings help explain how earthquakes might start off slow and silent before quickly turning dangerous. They show that small, slow cracks can suddenly transform into powerful, fast-moving ruptures if the conditions are right. Scientists believe that they can learn to detect the aseismic stage before a crack speeds up. It might one day be possible to predict earthquakes, or at least understand the warning signs better. Now, even though earthquakes are only the third most common type of natural disaster, they cause the highest number of fatalities. NASA plays an important role in studying earthquakes by using satellites that orbit the Earth. These satellites collect data and images that show how the ground changes after an earthquake. For example, they can detect when the land shifts, rises, sinks, or cracks. These surface changes help scientists learn more about the strength and impact of earthquakes. NASA's satellites can also track changes in nighttime lights. If a city goes dark after a quake, that's a clear sign that the area may have lost power and could need help. Now, how about we talk about the most common earthquake myths, like the one about megaquakes? Some people really worry about super huge earthquakes, but there's a limit to how big they can get. The size of an earthquake depends on the size of the fault where it happens. A longer and deeper fault can cause a bigger earthquake. For example, the San Andreas Fault in California is long, about 800 miles, but not very deep, around 10 to 12 miles. This makes earthquakes bigger than magnitude 8.3 on that fault very unlikely. The biggest earthquake ever recorded happened in Chile in 1960. It had a magnitude of 9.5 and occurred on a huge fault that was almost 1,000 miles long and 150 miles wide. Technically, there's no set limit on the magnitude scale, but an earthquake bigger than magnitude 12 would need a fault larger than Earth, which just isn't possible. Now, earthquakes can happen near the surface or deep underground. Most occur in Earth's crust or upper mantle, down to about 500 miles deep. But the deepest ones happen only at subduction zones, places where one part of Earth's crust slides under another. In California, almost all earthquakes happen in the top 15 miles of the crust. One exception is the Cascadia subduction zone in Northern California, which continues up through Oregon, Washington, and Canada. Another misconception is that the ground can open during an earthquake, but usually that only happens in movies. A giant crack opening and swallowing things up during an earthquake is just fiction. In real life, the ground on either side of a fault slides past each other. It doesn't pull apart or open wide. Small cracks or holes can happen during landslides or ground failures, but not along the actual fault line itself. Faults don't open up because if they did, there'd be no friction, and without friction, there wouldn't be an earthquake at all. Now, some people think California could break off and sink into the ocean during an earthquake, but that's not how it happens. The ocean floor is just lower land with water above it. California can't fall in. What's really happening is that southwestern California is slowly sliding north toward Alaska along the San Andreas Fault. The Pacific Plate, which California sits on, is moving about 2 inches per year, about as fast as your fingernails grow. So, in about 15 million years, Los Angeles and San Francisco could be neighbors. And in 70 million years, Los Angeles might be sitting near Alaska. I can't wait. People often wonder whether an aftershock can be bigger than the earthquake itself. Aftershocks are smaller earthquakes that happen in the same area after a larger one. They're like our planet's way of settling down after the main shock. But if an aftershock turns out to be bigger than the first earthquake, then we call the bigger one the main shock, and the earlier one becomes a foreshock. About 5 to 10% of earthquakes in California are followed by a stronger one within a week. It's also possible for 2 quakes in the same area to be about the same size. However, very large earthquakes are rare, so it's even rarer to see 2 huge ones happen close together.
The snowpack over your head splits in two right in front of your eyes and starts tumbling down in the frozen slope to its resting place far, far below. Anything in its way is crushed under the immense mass of snow and debris. You're witnessing an avalanche, one of the most dangerous natural disasters. But what if I tell you about another kind of avalanche, no less blood-chilling than the mountain one? And the most bizarre thing about it is that it occurs underwater. Underwater avalanches are powerful and disastrous natural phenomena, often much more dangerous than land ones. They have the potential to wreak havoc on the entire planet, leading to catastrophic consequences. The most alarming thing? They occur all the time under the surface of the ocean, impossible to see, predict, and extremely difficult to measure. Such avalanches can get 100 times larger than land ones, and they pose a great risk to the world's communications, capable of leaving the entire planet without the internet. But we'll talk about it a bit later. First, let's go 60,000 years back into the past. We're near the northwest coast of Africa, ready to witness the colossal scale and devastating impact of a ginormous underwater avalanche. It started as a quite small underwater landslide in the Agadir Canyon. At first, it was just 0.35 cubic miles of material, but in no time, this mass increased more than 100 times in size while traveling across the Atlantic Ocean floor. As the avalanche sped up and grew, it picked up gravel, sand, rocks, and mud. It carved a devastating path through one of the world's largest submarine canyons, wiping out all forms of animal and plant life on its way. The disastrous flow was so powerful that it literally eroded a 250-mile stretch of the canyon, cutting hundreds of feet into its sides and damaging a total area of 1,740 square miles. That's the area of more than 3.5 New York cities. As for the force of the flow, it was so immense that it propelled massive boulders up the canyon walls to heights of up to 430 feet. Before scientists discovered the evidence of this catastrophic event, they had seriously underestimated the scale of destruction caused by submarine avalanches. By the way, these devastating catastrophes can start not only far away in the ocean, but also at estuaries. Let's go back to 14 January 2020 and see for ourselves. A turbidity current, a rapid, downhill flow of water containing a lot of sediment, rushed more than 680 miles from the Congo River estuary in the deep sea. This current appeared due to two factors: terrible flooding along the Congo River in late December 2019 and unusually large spring tides. This resulted in an avalanche of sand and mud. Its volume was equivalent to 1/3 of all the sediment produced annually by all the rivers in the world. This sediment avalanche accelerated, increasing in speed from 17 feet per second in the upper part of the Congo Canyon to 26 feet per second when it reached the end of the channel, almost 700 miles away from the coastline. This route made it the longest avalanche of sediment ever measured on our planet. 2 days later, the flow reached the deep ocean. The avalanche broke two seabed telecommunication cables, cutting internet data speeds all the way across West, Central, and South Africa. Now, before this disaster, scientists considered that measuring powerful deep-sea avalanches was impractical. But the sediment flow in the Congo Canyon could be monitored directly, finally allowing researchers to assess how major river floods connected to the deep sea. They also concluded that how often underwater avalanches occurred depended on where the observer was. Seafloor canyons that are close to river mouths can experience several tiny avalanches per year. Other systems, far from river discharges like the Agadir Canyon, can only have one monster of an avalanche every 10,000 years or so. You're likely wondering, what can trigger an avalanche under the surface of the ocean? Well, earthquakes, typhoons, high tides, river floods, and even volcanic eruptions. And due to our changing climate, such events become more and more frequent and intense. At the same time, these triggers don't mean that an avalanche is bound to happen, nor do they relate to the scale of the event. See for yourself. In 1755, a powerful earthquake hit the coast of Portugal, wiping out large parts of Lisbon. Tens of thousands of people lost their lives during that disaster, but it only triggered a tiny underwater avalanche. And in 1929, a large earthquake off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada, triggered the largest underwater avalanche ever recorded. The flow traveled at a speed of 42 miles per hour, carrying boulders, sand, and mud. It snapped 11 seabed cables on its journey downhill. The avalanche was so powerful, it produced a tsunami that claimed the lives of 28 people along the coastline. Now, submarine avalanches are totally invisible because they happen deep under the ocean surface, which makes them extremely hard to study. But we must find a way because these flows are super important. They transport sediments, nutrients, and even pollutants across the ocean floor. So, a research team from Liverpool decided to unravel this mystery. Over the last 40 years, they've collected more than 300 samples from the ocean floor. Combined with seismic and bathymetric data, which is a fancy word for ocean mapping, they managed to reconstruct a massive submarine avalanche. It was the first time an underwater avalanche of this size was mapped out. An even cooler thing, the event itself started off pretty modestly, but it quickly evolved into a colossal avalanche that grew to more than 650 feet tall. To put that into perspective, imagine a skyscraper-sized avalanche zooming from Liverpool to London, cutting a trench 100 feet deep and 9 miles wide. Then it spread out over an area bigger than the UK, covering it with several feet of sand and mud. That's like burying a whole country. These findings are actually a big deal because they show that even a small underwater landslide can turn into something massive and super destructive. But that's not the worst. Think about undersea internet cables, which are essential for global communication. There are more than 550 active seafloor cables around the world. Their combined length is a whopping 870,000 miles. That's enough to wrap around our planet 35 times. When a submarine avalanche breaks seafloor cables, the effects are usually super expensive and devastating. For example, in 2006, an earthquake in Taiwan triggered underwater avalanches that cut loads of seafloor cables connecting Southeast Asia with the rest of the world. The largest internet operator in China had a 90% loss of traffic to the USA at the peak of the event. As for Taiwan itself, it experienced between 74 to 100% loss in traffic to neighboring islands. So now you probably get why we need to learn more about this natural phenomenon. Luckily, researchers at Tulane University have found a way to study it in 3D. Previous studies only looked at submarine avalanches in 2D, which didn't give the full picture of how they actually behaved. The new research focused on how underwater flows interacted with mini basins, natural features on the ocean floor that look like shallow bowls. Despite being called mini, these bowls can be huge, up to 4 square miles. When turbidity currents flow into these mini basins, they don't just stop. No, they hit the far side and curl back around like water eddies in a stream. These swirling flows move the sediment around before it settles on the ocean floor. The size of the mini basin and the speed of the flow can change how the current behaves. If the basin is big and the current is slow, it starts to fill up with sediment. But if you crank up the flow speed or shrink the basin, the current starts to overflow, spilling over the basin. To study all this, the researchers created a mini version of a mini basin in a pool and used different speeds of flow to simulate turbidity currents. They even made their own sediment mixtures to see how different sizes of particles would behave. In the end, they managed to mimic real-life ocean conditions, but on a smaller, manageable scale. Pretty cool, huh?
So, since 2000, the world has been hit with more than 1,700 earthquakes with magnitude greater than 5. Many happened around the Ring of Fire, located around the Pacific Ocean. In North America, the biggest threat is the San Andreas fault line, which can create an earthquake of a magnitude higher than any other, earning it the spine-tingling nickname, the Big One. The potential destruction of California is a terrifying prospect that could have unimaginable consequences. But the Big One is just the beginning of what's to come. Bad news! Scientists have predicted an earth-shattering event that will occur in 2030. Like it or not, there's a 70% chance that we'll experience the Big One, and it will be an earthquake with a magnitude of 6.7. The San Andreas fault line will cause the Big One, but what is scary is that we can't predict it. On the other hand, a massive earthquake occurs every 100 years. This means there's always time to prepare for a natural disaster. If we traveled back in time, we'd see a few significant earthquakes like the ones that wiped out San Francisco and Fort Tajon. Buildings made a long time ago are not quake-proof. They will collapse. Even if they survive, you should not enter them. But buildings are not the most dangerous part. You should watch out for electrical lines and gas pipes. Your hill house might be lovely, but it is extremely unsafe. During quakes, the hill can turn into a massive landslide that will destroy everything in its path. Say goodbye to road trips because all the roads will be ruined. You should have some spare water and food since you won't be able to go to the supermarket. This disaster won't be cheap. It will cost the U.S. around $200 billion to recover from the quake. At least the earthquake will not trigger tsunamis, but there's something that can cause more damage than the Big One. The notorious Cascadia subduction zones start in California and ends up all the way in Vancouver, Canada. The San Andreas fault line is nothing compared to this zone. It can wipe the whole coast off the face of the Earth, an example of hyperbole. Subduction zones are tectonic plates forced to be one under the other and constantly pulling apart. One is called the North American Plate and the other is the Juan de Fuca Plate. Zones like these are not to be messed with, since they are terrifying hotspots for earthquake activity and extremely dangerous because they cause massive underwater quakes. But they are underwater, so what can they do to us? Well, they can cause giant tsunamis, flooding cities, and destroying the coastline. Right now, the most active zone is the Ring of Fire. The Cascadia zone might be less active, but it is like a sleeping beast that can wake up and destroy everything in its path, causing a groundbreaking earthquake. The last time all this stress was released was in the year 1700. Unlike the San Andreas quake, this one will cause massive tsunamis and much bigger shocks. Let's hope you'll be camping in an open field at that time, because most buildings and bridges will likely be destroyed. Also, be ready for the aftershocks, as they'll be devastating. Nature won't be spared either. Landslides will change animals' habitats. Even our homes will be changed forever. Luckily, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and scientists are doing everything they can to ensure our safety. New rules are implemented. Every new building must be able to withstand massive shocks. They're developing modern warning systems, and every new infrastructure must follow strict quake-proof guidelines. The Juan de Fuca and the North American plates are locked together, but they won't stay like that forever. When they unlock, get ready for a massive shake. The closer you are to the epicenter, the more damage you'll experience. But even if you are lucky to be far away, you may still feel the ground shaking for some time. Now, if we compare the Cascadia subduction zone and the San Andreas Fault, we'll see how much more dangerous the Cascadia zone is. In 1994, there was an enormous 6.7 magnitude earthquake in the Northridge area, close to the San Andreas Fault. Sadly, many people didn't make it, and some were injured. Back then, buildings were not strong and earthquake-proof, and many of them were damaged. The Cascadia subduction zone can potentially cause a magnitude 9 earthquake. A magnitude 6 quake has the power of around 44 million pounds of dynamite, but a magnitude 9 has the power of 44 trillion pounds of dynamite. The strongest ever recorded quake was in Chile. Its magnitude measured 9.5, and it destroyed most everything. So let's say you've survived the quake, but the struggle is far from over. Soon after, a massive tsunami will strike, with waves that might reach up to 100 feet in some areas. That's so unlike the San Andreas earthquake, which can't produce any significant waves. So say goodbye to your beautiful garden, since salt water will destroy trees and plants, changing the environment for a period of time. The only positive thing will be you won't need Halloween decorations, because all those dried-out trees will resemble a ghost forest. The combination of waves, quakes, and the sheer size of the area will make this natural disaster much more dangerous than any caused by the San Andreas Fault or the so-called Big One. A quake similar to this happened around 300 years ago. Many more have been recorded in the past 3,500 years, proving that they continually occur every 400 to 600 years. So, technically, we have around 100 to 300 years before the next big one hits. We still have no idea how exactly the Cascadia subduction zone works, because we discovered it in 1970. This zone is super scary because it can cause big earthquakes. It was found by accident when researchers studied the Ring of Fire. They wanted to know if this area had caused any trouble in the past years, and the proof was under their noses. In Washington, there is a horror forest where nothing has been growing for years. When researchers tested the soil, they found a tremendous amount of salt. They put 2 and 2 together and concluded that a massive tsunami had been the reason. Experts still didn't know when the forest was destroyed, but Japan kept records of a gigantic earthquake that had a similar effect. It was the one that happened in the year 1700. There is a 1 in 3 chance that the next one will occur in 2050. You must know how to survive the Canadian earthquakes and make it out unscathed, so listen carefully. Those who live in this area have almost no experience with earthquakes like this one. Surviving the quake is relatively easy, but the tsunami coming afterwards is the real danger. After the shake, find the highest ground and go there. Only bring the essentials, like food and water. Yeah, leave your baseball card collection at home. After the first hit, don't try to go down. Seismologists say that most likely there will be a few more waves, and they have proven this. On the 22nd of May, 1960, seismologist Jerry Eston and his 4 friends went to Hawaii to see an expected tsunami that was to happen around midnight. They set up their gear on Wailuku Bridge with an escape route planned. This bridge had been destroyed in the previous tsunami, but the new one was much taller and better. After midnight, the water was 4 feet above the average level. The second wave hit a half hour after midnight, and the water rose another 9 feet by 1 a.m. The water started going down and dropped by 7 feet, but the horror was far from over. Next, they saw a wave that was around 20 feet tall. This shows us that tsunamis are unpredictable, and we should listen to experts to stay safe.
A magnitude 15 earthquake has the potential to completely destroy our planet and evaporate all the water in a matter of seconds, leaving Earth uninhabitable. Over 500,000 earthquakes happen annually, but none have a magnitude of 15. 90% of quakes occur in the terrifying Ring of Fire zone located around the Pacific Ocean. The ground there is like jello. It shakes almost constantly. The most powerful earthquake to have ever struck Earth had a magnitude of 9.5. That much power can lengthen or shorten the day. But there's probably an earthquake in the confines of your own home now caused by a speck of dust landing on a table. But it has a power of negative 15 magnitudes. Earthquakes happen when tectonic plates move. They're like Lego pieces that are not properly secured, and when they move up, down, or hit one another, the ground also moves, triggering earthquakes. This tectonic energy acts like a battery. It stores energy for a long time, up to 500 years. When this stored energy is released in a sudden burst, the consequences are horrifying. Even the strongest structures submit to this relentless force that leaves a trail of destruction in its path. In some instances, earthquakes can even trigger tsunamis, amplifying the chaos. Such a crazy amount of power can split the ground open and cause severe damage. The strength of an earthquake is measured by the Richter scale, but now it's being replaced by the moment magnitude scale. When there's an earthquake, we hear about how strong it is. It's usually from 1 to 10. Luckily, we haven't had a Richter scale earthquake yet. The most powerful earthquake to have ever happened in modern history occurred in Chile in the 60s. It was around 9.5 on the Richter scale, and it altered Earth's rotation and messed up the length of the day by around 2 milliseconds. It also triggered a massive tsunami and affected a vast area of 155,000 square miles. The Richter scale doesn't actually have a limit. Still, anything above 25 doesn't need measuring, because if that ever happened, we would simply turn into dust, and nobody would care to measure this disaster. As we said, the strongest earthquake had a magnitude of 9.5. If this magnitude had been just 0.5 stronger, it would have created a ruptured line 2,174 miles long. That is almost 7 times the size of Wyoming. A magnitude 11 earthquake would create a crack halfway around the world. Massive tsunamis would hit coastal areas, destroying everything, and Earth would get into a massive environmental crisis. If you love hiking, you would have new mountains to explore, created by the terrifying earthquake. Even the temperature would increase because of volcanic eruptions and the resulting greenhouse gases. It would turn our planet into a hot oven. The safest places would be far away from any buildings, seas, oceans, and mountains where there would be a low chance of a landslide. Countries unprepared for earthquakes would be totally destroyed, and cities would turn into piles of rubble and dust. Going up on the Richter scale would only make things worse. But don't worry, an earthquake of that power is impossible. Earth's crust doesn't have enough energy to produce such earthquakes. But there is something that has much more power and can produce mega earthquakes. Asteroids are powerful enough to destroy our planet, as we all know from the dinosaur era. That asteroid was around 6 miles long, and it caused massive damage to the planet. It triggered earthquakes that shook the ground constantly for months. These terrifying quakes were about 50,000 times stronger than the Chile earthquake. They also triggered a tsunami that was 30,000 times more powerful than the Indian Ocean tsunami. And the latter was one of the most devastating tsunamis to have ever struck Earth. The earthquakes caused by the asteroid had a magnitude of 11, making it the most powerful and scariest natural disaster ever. And let's hope it stays that way. The Indian Ocean tsunami affected only certain areas of the world. Meanwhile, the asteroid tsunami affected every part of the world and had 33-foot-tall waves. Even if you had traveled to the most remote place on Earth, you wouldn't have been able to hide from this Grim Reaper. A 15-magnitude earthquake wouldn't be 15% stronger than the Chile earthquake. The scale doesn't work like that. It would be around 100 million times more powerful than a 9.5 magnitude quake. It could make all the water on Earth evaporate, leaving us devastated and without any H2O to survive. All ecosystems would collapse, all food chains would be broken, and only some super strong bacteria would probably survive the impossible. That is only a fraction of the frightening things that could happen. The ocean is like the AC for our planet. Without it, Earth would be super hot. The ocean also serves as a shield from the sun's powerful rays. It acts as a heat absorber and cools Earth. Scientists think that the most dangerous thing would be the inability of Earth's crust to survive the violent shakes of the 15-magnitude earthquake. If our planet miraculously survived and didn't turn into dust, there would be massive openings in its crust. The ground would become gelatinous. It would randomly move up, down, left, and right, and no building would survive that. Our civilization would be brought back to the Stonehenge era. Tectonic movements like this are devastating. A similar thing happened in Japan when tectonic plates moved 165 feet from each other and then snapped back together, creating a 9-magnitude earthquake. No place on Earth is immune to this bone-chilling natural phenomenon. Still, certain places have higher chances of being destroyed than others, like the Ring of Fire, where 90% of earthquakes happen. This is a place where earthquakes are almost everyday occurrences. The Ring of Fire is located in the Pacific Ocean. It forms a ring around the continents that surround the Pacific. There, several tectonic plates meet, creating highly unstable ground. To make the problem much more terrifying, 75% of active volcanoes are located in this area. 90% of dormant volcanoes are also there, making this place extremely dangerous. Scientists carefully study this region to find a way to predict when the next earthquake might strike. The Ring of Fire is not the only place at risk of earthquakes. In California, along the San Andreas fault line, 2 tectonic plates have been storing power for more than 200 years. The San Andreas Fault is 715 miles long and has the potential for a massive earthquake. This region has its fear of violent earthquakes like the one that happened in San Francisco in 1906. It had a magnitude of 7.8 on the Richter scale. Scientists' predictions are terrifying. They say that the chance of a 6.7 magnitude earthquake is very high in the area. If all hell starts to break loose, you should know how to survive. Avoid anything that might fall on you, like windows, closets, or unstable ceilings. The official phrase from emergency experts is drop, cover, and hold on. Stay low to the ground. Hide under something stable like a table, and remain there until the shaking stops. Make sure to stay in your shelter for another minute or two, just in case there are aftershocks or loose debris. Use your nose and smell for gas. If you do smell it, don't turn the lights on or do anything that might ignite it. Stay strong and be safe.
An earthquake in Indonesia began in 1829 and lasted a mighty 32 years. It reached its climax in 1861 and hit a magnitude of around 8.5. It was caused by the tectonic plates below the island slowly clashing against each other. Researchers discovered that the quake had been building for some time after analyzing the coral in the area. They found it was being periodically exposed to the open air. That was caused by the gradual earthquake moving the land up and down. Scientists call these decades-long silent earthquakes slow slip events. A single lightning bolt can warm the air to around 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat makes the air expand quickly, creating a shock wave or boom, which we know to be thunder. There are close to 3 trillion trees on Earth. That translates to roughly around 422 trees for every person. Before humans, the number was nearer to 6 trillion. Almost 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, which on average is around 2.5 miles deep. 97% of Earth's volcanoes lie underwater, as well as the mid-ocean ridge, a massive mountain range that is over 40,000 miles long. Humans have mined around 190,000 tons of gold from the planet. Experts predict there is around 20% still left to be mined, but this figure is constantly changing. The world's largest active volcano is in Hawaii. Called Mauna Loa, it's over 2.5 miles above sea level. Given that most of it is underwater, the volcano's summit is a staggering 11 miles from its base. That's the same length as over 160 football fields. The highest ever recorded temperature on Earth was a sweltering 136 degrees Fahrenheit. It was recorded in El Azizia, or modern-day Libya, on September 13, 1922. The lowest temperature was a chilling minus 129 degrees Fahrenheit, recorded at Russia's Vostok station in 1983. Earth is the fifth largest planet in the solar system, behind Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. It has a circumference of roughly 25,000 miles, and it would take the average person around 8,300 hours to walk around the face of the Earth. The separation between Earth's land masses would make such a trek almost impossible, though. It takes 365.25 days for the Earth to orbit the Sun. Because our calendar years only have 365 days, we add an extra leap day every 4 years to make up for the difference. Russia is the largest country on the planet, with a total area of about 6.5 million square miles. It encompasses more than 1/8 of the Earth's inhabited land area, but still has a relatively small population given its size. Earth is the only planet with one moon. Mercury and Venus have no moons, while every other planet has 2 or more. Earth is over 4 billion years old. Scientists calculate this by looking at the planet's oldest rocks, as well as meteorites that have crash-landed. They used meteorites as they were formed at the same time as Earth, when the solar system was forming. The ground we walk on is basically recycled. The planet's rock cycle turns igneous rocks to sedimentary ones, then transforms those into metamorphic rocks, and back again. Like Earth, our moon also experiences earthquakes. They're less common and intense than the ones we have, and are caused by tidal stresses. A tidal stress is basically the relationship between the gravitational pull of the moon on the Earth and that of the Earth on the moon. Despite being the 5th largest continent, Antarctica holds 70% of the planet's fresh water and about 90% of its ice. Bangkok is the most visited city in the world, boasting 23 million visitors in 2019 alone. Paris, London, Dubai, and Singapore make up the other cities in the top 5. The lowest layer of Earth's atmosphere is called the troposphere and is the reason we have weather. Sunlight heats the planet's surface, which causes warm air to rise up to the troposphere. This air then expands and cools as the air pressure decreases and sinks down, where it is then warmed by the Earth again. Coral reefs are the largest living structures on the planet, with some even being visible from space. Coral reefs hold the most species per area of any of Earth's ecosystems, even more than rainforests. Earth got its name around 1,000 years ago, and it comes from the German word meaning the ground, but there's no evidence to show who actually named it. Of all the planets, Earth is also the only one which is not named after a Greek or Roman deity. The deepest point of the ocean is the Mariana Trench. It's a whopping 7 miles below sea level. Coastlines cover about 20% of U.S. land, but are home to more than 50% of the U.S. population. The Earth isn't actually a sphere. It's more like a squished ball that bulges at the equator. The bulge is caused by the force of the Earth spinning, which makes the north and south poles slightly flat. The Earth spins on its axis, which is basically an imaginary straight line. Earth has seasons because the axis is tilted, causing the sun's rays to hit different parts of the planet more directly, depending on the time of year. If the sun was as tall as a standard door, the Earth would be around the size of a nickel. The Earth's rate of rotation is gradually decreasing. It's happening so slowly that it would take as much as 140 million years for the length of a day to increase to 25 hours.
Get equipped for any season with brand new Brightside merch. Click the link and grab your print.
The biggest animal on Earth is the Antarctic blue whale. It can reach lengths of 100 feet and weigh up to 400,000 pounds, which is around the same as 33 elephants. The temperature at the center of the Earth is around the same as the surface of the Sun, at almost 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Earth is around 10,000 times older than humans. Earth is around 4.5 billion years old, whereas humans have been around for, at most, 450,000 years. There are around 34,000 known species of fish. The actual number is way higher though, as a whopping 95% of our oceans still haven't been explored. America's Route 66 is longer than the journey to the Earth's core. The distance to the core is roughly 2,000 miles. Route 66 is almost 2,500 miles. The Earth is made up of three main components: the crust, the mantle, and the core, which is divided into the outer core and the inner core. Scientists have estimated that there are around 8.7 million species on the planet. Out of this, between 1 to 2 million of these species are animals. But roughly 86% of land species and 91% of fish have yet to be discovered by humans. Ancient astronomers used to think that the Earth was the center of the universe. For 2,000 years, they believed the Earth to be static, while other bodies traveled in orbit around us. In 1543, Copernicus published his sun-centered model of the solar system. Earth is the densest planet in the solar system. The density varies across its different crusts, but the planet's average density is just over 3 ounces per cubic inch. Mount Everest is the highest point on the planet. Its peak is the highest altitude above sea level at around 5.5 miles. Each year, 1 septillion crystals of snow fall on Earth. That's a trillion snowflakes. Snow covers about 31% of Earth's land area each year. Of Earth's water, only around 3% is fresh water. The other 97% is salted. Of that 3%, about 2% is frozen in ice and glaciers. So, less than 1% of the planet's fresh water is actually in lakes, rivers, and underground. The world's largest inland body of water, or lake to us normal people, is the Caspian Sea. It has an area of 140,000 miles squared. The world's deepest lake is Lake Baikal in Russia and is 5,300 feet deep. Earth's atmosphere is roughly 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen, with small amounts of water vapor, carbon dioxide, and other gases. No other planet is believed to have this much oxygen, which explains why Earth is the only planet where life has been discovered so far. Apart from the Moon, there are 2 asteroids in co-orbital orbits with Earth, sometimes called Earth's second moon. 3753 Cruithne is an asteroid that looks like it's following the Earth in orbit, but it's actually following its own path around the Sun. 2002 AA29 is another asteroid which makes a horseshoe orbit around the Earth that draws it close to the planet every 95 years.
It happened in Iceland on Friday, March 19, 2021 at 8:45 p.m., about 20 miles southwest of the capital. Molten rock suddenly burst through the surface from below. Bright lava fountains then lit up the night sky. A volcano in this valley finally woke up after almost 800 years of sleeping soundly. We divide volcanoes into 3 categories: active, dormant, or extinct. Around 1,900 of them around the globe are considered active. That means they've erupted in the recent past and will likely do it again in the possible near future. Dormant volcanoes haven't popped off for a long time, but they still may in the future. You could say they're sort of sleeping. As for extinct ones, those guys haven't done anything in more than 1 million years. The eruption in Iceland wasn't super explosive, and this all happened 6 miles from the nearest town, so everyone was perfectly safe. Many even came to see it up close, while other brave visitors tried to fry eggs and bacon on the lava. Just be careful not to burn your breakfast black. Lava can be over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It burns everything in its path. Yet it also produces some of the most fertile land for agriculture. This eruption gave a relatively small amount of lava at first, but it's been spreading across the valley in different directions, forming a sort of shield that's constantly growing. You can never really predict how fast a lava flow will be until you see it. It all depends on how thick it is and how steep the mountain slope. Lava can ooze slowly at about 20 feet a minute, a fraction of the average person's walking speed. Or it can flow as fast as 30 miles per hour, which even the fastest person on Earth can't outrun. But the lava isn't even the most dangerous thing about volcanoes. That would be the toxic gases spewing from the eruption. And those spread faster and further than the lava flow. Luckily, in Iceland's case, the wind has been blowing these gases away from residential areas. Scientists weren't surprised this volcano erupted. They knew it was coming. Increasingly stronger earthquakes had been shaking this area for the past 15 months. There were 50,000 earthquakes within just the 3 weeks leading up to the eruption. That's 100 per hour. The volcano has been active since March, and geologists say this could last for weeks, months, years, or even decades of constant eruptions in the area. Mount Shasta is in the top 5 most dangerous volcanoes in the U.S., so geologists are keeping a close eye on it. The last eruption was in 1250. I wasn't around then, but this volcano erupts every 600 to 800 years. Which means tick-tock, we're due any day now. About an hour from Portland, Oregon, there's an active volcano that last erupted in the 19th century. Next time it goes off, scientists think it'll produce larger amounts of ash and dust. This could cause an electrical blackout and make water unsafe to drink in the area. But the experts pay close attention to Mount Hood. They'll be able to give plenty of warning so people can react in time. Kilauea is one of the most active volcanoes in the world. It's been erupting almost constantly since 1983, making it also one of the longest eruptions known on Earth. It's the youngest land volcano in Hawaii. Volcanoes can take thousands of years to form, but others can pop up practically overnight. A volcano in Mexico just erupted in an open field in 1943 and started growing from there. Within a year, it was almost 1,500 feet tall. When the eruptions finally stopped 9 years later, the mount had reached a height of over 9,200 feet. Mount Fuji is an iconic symbol of Japan. The last time it erupted was in 1707, and it sent a shower of burning rocks as far as 60 miles away. If a similar eruption happened today, Tokyo would be within that vicinity. Mount Fuji is right on the Ring of Fire, that horseshoe-shaped region in the Pacific Ocean full of active volcanoes and earthquakes. From one end to the other, it's almost 25,000 miles long. It could wrap all the way around the Earth's equator. In January 2020, Taal volcano in the Philippines started spewing lava, sending huge plumes of ash half a mile up into the sky. The eruption even triggered a rare phenomenon, a dirty thunderstorm. That's when the smoke cloud above a volcano produces its own lightning. The chance of volcanic tsunamis was also high. Those are usually caused by tectonic movements that occur because of volcanic activity. Taal has erupted more than 30 times in the last 450 years. This volcano in Ecuador last erupted in 2016. Scientists think it might be showing some early warning signs of magma on the move. This is an active stratovolcano, a specific cone-shaped type with steep sides. They form from sticky lava that doesn't flow that easily. That lava goes around the vent, cooling and piling on itself to form these steep walls. These types are more likely to produce explosive eruptions like the ones we see in movies. Ruapehu is the oldest national park in New Zealand, a volcanic wonderland where you can closely see all those steaming craters, magnificent lakes, and unusual rock formations. It last erupted in 2007 and has had 10 eruptions since the mid-19th century. But eruptions, lava flows, and toxic gases aren't the only danger coming from volcanoes. There's also a thing called lahar, a kind of volcanic mud flow of debris. In between eruptions, snow melts and a lake forms in the caldera. If the last eruption brought mud, ash, and rocks in the lake, it becomes dangerously full. In that case, only a temporary dam holds it back. Indonesia has the biggest number of active volcanoes in the world, including one called Anak Krakatoa. It means child of Krakatoa, and its famous parent isn't far away. A huge tsunami in 2018 partially woke Junior, a scary thought since Senior had one of the most powerful eruptions ever seen on this planet in 1883. Krakatoa's boom was the loudest sound ever heard. People over 2,000 miles away could hear the explosion. The sound wave circled the globe 7 times, and scientists say it's hard to predict this volcano's eruption patterns. Mount Yasur in Vanuatu is one of just a few volcanoes in the world where you can see a lava lake. Tourists even go there to peer over the edge and get a look at the burning, bubbling lake below. Well, except for when the volcanic activity goes to levels 3 and 4 out of 5. That means there are more intense earthquakes, volcanic tremors, or steam, gas, or ash ejections. Then this place is off limits because, duh. This volcano in the DR Congo has the most active and largest lake volcano in the world. And all that lava is unusually fluid, meaning it travels faster and further than the stuff coming out of most volcanoes. It's certainly not amongst the tallest ones, but Ethiopia's Erta Ale is unique in that it has a lava lake almost constantly, which is pretty rare. The locals call it a smoking mountain because its lava lake often causes eruptions. This volcano is near the Danakil Depression, one of the hottest places on our planet. Merupi has been erupting on a regular basis since the mid-16th century. This volcano helps scientists do crucial research on how eruptions work and how they can warn people in time. After it was dormant for a while, this volcano in central Mexico sprang back to life in 1994. Ever since then, it's been producing huge mud flows and strong explosions in unpredictable intervals. In the past, enormous eruptions coming from this giant buried entire cities in pyramids. Imagine staying in a hotel and waking up to the magnificent view of a massive volcano covered in glowing rivers of lava and clouds of ash. When it lets off heat, visitors to this area in Guatemala take a chance to roast some marshmallows there. One of the most active volcanoes on Earth is on a small island north of Sicily. Stromboli has regular explosions, together with glowing lava coming from vents inside the crater. Not too far away is Etna, Europe's most active volcano and one of the biggest continental ones in the world. By the way, Earth definitely isn't the only planet with volcanoes. The largest one in our solar system is on Mars. It would cover the entire state of Arizona, and it rises nearly 3 times higher than Mount Everest. Ooh, don't look down.
The air is bone dry and the wind is out of control. You feel like you're standing in front of a fireplace, but you're not. You're standing in your backyard about to grill up a feast when you suddenly see the trees shaking uncontrollably. Leaves are falling like confetti. The wind just blew your last piece of laundry into the great unknown. You look around and everyone else is just as confused and scared as you are. In the distance, you see a red horizon of fire in the forest and a large vortex touching the sky. You drop everything and make a break for it. You'll be lucky to outrun a tornado. They usually move at around 30 miles per hour, but can reach up to 70. Imagine running away from a giant twister, hurtling towards you at Usain Bolt speed. The roads are crowded with people trying to find shelter or just get out of town. You get in your car and try to start it, but the wind knocks a sign over. It smashes your windshield. Anyway, a big tornado is powerful enough to swing your entire car around. You gotta go on foot. Best bet? Head for your buddy's house. They have a deep basement stocked with supplies. Whenever a tornado flies on by, try to take cover somewhere underground. If you don't have a basement, avoid any windows and try to stay underneath something sturdy to protect yourself. You're running to your friend's place. Everything around you is getting swept up by the insane winds. But when you turn around, you see the tornado turning reddish.
You can barely see it because of the debris, but the spinning vortex, it's on fire. It's a fire tornado. These spinning flame winds can reach 140 miles per hour and can be between 15 to 150 feet tall and as much as 500 feet wide. These monsters occur when tons of smoke get whirled around, so the thunderstorm starts to act like a tornado. By the way, many fire tornadoes can even occur in a bonfire and are called fire whirls. Next time you're camping or setting up your living room fireplace, check it out. You might just spot one spinning around in there. Anyway, it's getting closer and closer, throwing ash all over. It's already pretty hard for you to see where you're going. You use your hands to wave off some of the smoke and ash flying around your face, but it's useless. You keep sprinting as fast as you can until you spot a huge truck. Just park right there in the middle of the road. You crawl underneath. It's one of those trucks that has like 20 wheels. They look so big and heavy up close. Then you hear a creaking sound and a humming sound. The wheels, they look magical. Gracefully, they start lifting off the ground, as if the truck's part of some Vegas magic act. As the tornado gets closer, the wheels rise higher. Better to be far away from here when the truck smashes back down to earth. You crawl out and keep running. You find a convenience store to take cover in, making sure not to stand too close to the glass. You head as far into the store as you can, ready to wait this thing out. But all around you, the land is burning. This fiery twister is a monster, and it's charging towards you. You look out in the distance and see another fire tornado wrecking another part of the city. In order for a tornado to form, it needs open space. That's why many of the tornadoes you see on the news happen in the same part of the U.S., where there aren't many mountains and it's nice and flat. But of course, they can happen anywhere. It's not normal to see tornadoes in the bustling downtowns of America's biggest cities. They need a lot of open space for the rotating vortex to happen. But today is not a normal day. A tornado forms in a supercell thunderstorm. That's when you have two different air temperatures going at it. The vortex you see in tornadoes forms when warm air and moisture come in from above. Below, it's a mess. The end result, the huge spiral funnel cloud we see in every tornado movie. Meteorologists can predict tornadoes somewhat by monitoring the amount of moisture in the air. Every second counts, so keep the TV on next time there's a storm brewing near you. But this doesn't really apply for a fire tornado. The winds are getting stronger and you're feeling the heat even inside the store. Outside, spiraling flamethrowers are torching everything in their path. It may be too late to find an underground shelter. You improvise a way to help protect yourself by hiding underneath the cash register. And now, you can't see anything. There's ash everywhere and the windows are all smashed. Thanks, tornado. Ash is one of the most dangerous parts of a fire tornado, unless you're not really into breathing or seeing. Your best bet would be to stay as low as you can to the ground. Since smoke rises, there might still be just enough oxygen down there. Crawling your way along will prevent you from getting struck by any flying objects or debris. The fires are now spreading, and there's a lot more smoke. The trees outside have caught fire, and there are glowing embers as far as the eye can see. These embers can travel more than a mile and can start fires on their own. Now that it's really going crazy, stuff in the store starts flying about, like the smoke wasn't bad enough. You feel like you're inside a snack-filled erupting volcano. It's only a matter of time before the table you're hiding under will get pulled up into the air. The sound inside the store is intense, like sitting next to a jet engine. You can't tell if you're sweating from the heat or from adrenaline. But suddenly, you see someone at the other end of the store waving at you, trying to tell you something. They have an underground storage room. You're saved. But getting there is going to be a real problem. You see, the table screw's getting loose, getting ready to fly into the air. You find a bottle of water next to you and rip a piece of cloth from your shirt. By using a wet cloth, you're able to filter out some of the nasty stuff in the air to help you keep breathing. So you crawl your way out from underneath the table and make your way to the underground storage room. But the ground is covered with broken glass, and there are cans and stuff everywhere. Even the cans are starting to heat up. You crawl like a sloth, trying to avoid anything pointy. The fire tornado is still out there, and it's getting even closer. You finally make it, and the clerk pulls you down the stairs. It's dark, but there's a single battery-powered lamp to help you see. When it comes to fire tornadoes, it's best to just wait it out. Most of these firestorms don't last that long. So you relax, or try to, and wash your face in a nearby sink. You wipe off all the black ash from your face and breathe normally again. But as you get a bit more relaxed, you feel the ground shaking. Everything around you starts to fall. You and the clerk duck behind a pile of canned goods. Then the tornado takes it up a notch. The store above you gets lifted up off the ground. The only things left, steel and concrete foundations and a couple of random columns. The steel door that's separating you from the outside is barely holding it together. You can see the screws getting loose. You can actually see fire enter the storage room. Everything in the room gets toppled over in an instant. The wind is even louder than before. But then, it's over. Those few minutes felt like hours. You and the clerk climb out and see, well, not much to be honest. The convenience store looks like it got ripped off like a Band-Aid. And all around you, a town you can't even recognize anymore. The big problem with these fire tornadoes is the fires they leave behind. They can ruin towns, forests, farms, and lives. You're walking through a bustling town near the Bay of Naples. It looks full of life, energy, and healthy food. Look at these flatbreads that might have been ancient pizza, no less. The people of Pompeii are living their best lives. But all of that comes to a fiery halt in 79 CE. That's when Mount Vesuvius, that unassuming mountain looming over the city, decides it's time to make history. And the result is a tragic story that archaeologists are still piecing together 2,000 years later. Now, if you think Pompeii was some boring, dusty old place, well, think again. This was a lively, buzzing town. There were farmers bringing in fresh produce, merchants selling their goods, bakers cranking out bread and pizza-like flatbreads, and gladiators gearing up for fights in the amphitheater. The people of Pompeii loved decorating their homes with frescoes, mosaics, and statues. And food was a big deal. Pompeii was home to some of the earliest restaurants, called Thermopylae, where people could grab hot meals on the go. But let's get back to the fateful day when this beautiful, simple life ended. The saddest thing is that the people of Pompeii had warnings. They just didn't know it. Around 4 days before Vesuvius erupted, there had been minor tremors, but the locals were used to earthquakes. They had a massive one in 62 CE that destroyed lots of buildings, but they rebuilt the town and kept living there. No one thought, hey, maybe that giant mountain is the problem. So by the time 79 CE rolled around, Pompeii was back to normal, or so they thought. Now it's the morning of the eruption, just another regular day. People are working, shopping, and chilling in the baths. And then, out of nowhere, Vesuvius erupts. It was a catastrophic explosion that shot a plume of ash, gas, and rocks 20 miles into the sky. Pliny the Younger, a Roman writer who watched this disaster unfold from across the bay, wrote that it looked like a pine tree of fire and smoke rising into the heavens. Suddenly, it began raining with ash. First it was a drizzle, then it started coming in buckets. Gray, heavy rain that didn't let you breathe. Then hail began falling from the sky. But it wasn't hail. Those were pumice stones, light chunks of volcanic rock. They were smashing roofs and windows and piling up in the streets. That's when people started panicking. Some of them decided to escape, so they ran from the town. Others thought the walls of their homes would protect them. Well, they didn't. Soon things turned even worse. The ash had covered Pompeii's streets, and buildings were collapsing under its weight. But the real nightmare came early the next morning. Pyroclastic flows, a fatal avalanche of superheated gas, ash, and rock that was racing down the side of a volcano at more than 200 miles per hour. The heat alone, around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, instantly finished the life of anyone who ended up in the way of the flow. When the pyroclastic flows hit Pompeii, it was, unfortunately, game over for the town. Those who decided to stay in the city didn't stand a chance. The people were trapped so quickly that their bodies were left frozen in their last moments, some shielding their faces, others holding loved ones. In one bakery, archaeologists found the skeletons of 3 people who'd stayed behind. They thought the oven's stone walls would protect them, but those just weren't strong enough to resist the elements. When the eruption finished, Pompeii was covered with 20 feet of volcanic debris. What archaeologists eventually found when they uncovered the town was both mesmerizing and terrifying at the same time. Because Pompeii was buried so suddenly, everything remained preserved: homes, streets, art, food, and even people. These days, scientists are rethinking what we know about the victims of the Pompeii disaster, thanks to new DNA evidence. Apparently, a lot of our assumptions about who these people were might be way off. A recent study by researchers from the US and Italy has shaken things up. They found that some of the victims, who they assumed were family members, weren't related at all. On top of that, the gender of some individuals was misidentified. The researchers believe that older interpretations were influenced by modern ideas about gender and relationships, which might have clouded the actual history. One of the study's co-authors from the University of Florence pointed out that conclusions based on limited evidence often reflect the biases of the time. Back then, researchers had to rely on the physical appearance of casts to make their guesses. Now, with DNA evidence, the story looks very different. Let's look at the case of the so-called family found in the House of the Golden Bracelet, which was discovered in 1974 on a Pompeii hillside. This group of 4 victims was named after an elaborate piece of jewelry was found on one of them. Based on the cast, one of the figures, who was holding a child, was assumed to be a mother. But the DNA results revealed this person was, in fact, a man. Even more surprising, none of the individuals were related, as scientists thought previously. Not surprising, given the extreme confusion and terror the people experienced as they desperately took shelter anywhere they could. Another interesting finding involves a pair of victims once thought to be sisters or a mother and daughter. DNA evidence now suggests that one of them was biologically male. Altogether, the researchers have analyzed the remains of 14 individuals for this study, and this is just a small portion of more than 1,000 victims of Mount Vesuvius's eruption that have been found so far. Archaeologists in Pompeii have also made one more discovery. Look at this figure. Initially, everyone believed that this man had been crushed by a massive boulder, a stone block that might have been part of a door frame during the eruption. His skull, with its mouth open as if in a final gasp, was found near his body. He was probably trying to escape all the chaos when it happened. But new evidence suggests that wasn't the case. His demise was likely the result of asphyxiation from a pyroclastic flow. For a long time, people thought Vesuvius erupted on August 24th. That's what some evidence seemed to suggest. But over the years, archaeologists started finding evidence that pointed to a later date. For example, they found graffiti dating back to late October and food remains, such as pomegranates. Such products wouldn't have been around in August yet. Plus, they found heating braziers in homes. Who would need extra heat in the summer of Italy? So, most experts agree that the eruption happened in late October. Now, it turns out that not everyone in Pompeii passed away. Scientists think that 15,000 people lived in the town, and only about 2,000 of them didn't survive the disaster. It means thousands of people managed to escape. But at the same time, their lives changed forever. They didn't have homes to come back to. Imagine fleeing your home with nothing but the clothes on your back, leaving behind everything you've ever known. Some survivors made it to nearby cities like Naples, but they had to start over from scratch. But recently, archaeologists made a pretty cool discovery: a fresco of a flatbread that might have been the ancient ancestor of pizza. Researchers found this painting in a house near a bakery. It shows a round bread sitting on a silver platter next to a goblet. They think people might have eaten this bread with fruits like pomegranates or dates, or maybe topped with spices or a kind of pesto. But the coolest part is that Pompeii is just 14 miles from Naples, which is the modern home of pizza. The director of Pompeii pointed out how this discovery connected a simple poor man's dish from ancient times to the modern pizza we all know and love. Today, Pompeii is one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world. Every year, new discoveries help us understand Roman life of those times even better.
Back in the day, from 774 to 775, Earth got hit with a mega blast of radiation. This crazy burst of energy left its mark. 3 rings from that year show way too high levels of radioactive stuff. But what exactly caused it? Scientists are inclined to think that the reason was a solar flare. Some folks think maybe a massive supernova caused the radiation blast. But astronomer Phil Plait says that if that had been the case, it would have had to be less than 1,000 light years away and would have been crazy bright. But there's no record of that happening. No bright, shiny Death Star in sight. After looking at the radioactive carbon and beryllium in tree rings, scientists ruled out a bunch of other possibilities. At first, they considered that it was a smash-up between neutron stars or a neutron star and a black hole. These types of crashes produce a super quick blast of gamma rays without any light show, which lines up best with the evidence. But these kinds of collisions are super rare. Plait thinks it's kinda unlikely that this is the answer. He figures we should only see one of these events in our galaxy about once every million years. So having one just 1,200 years ago seems pretty wild. Scientists are seriously worried about these rare events. If one happened closer to Earth, it could seriously mess up life on our planet. Even if it was thousands of light years away, a similar event today could cause chaos with all the fancy electronic systems we've come to rely on. So it's a good thing those gamma ray bursts are so rare, because if they were more common, Earth might be in for a rough ride. You may think that if our planet could withstand mega radiation blasts, it can easily withstand something less frightening. Let's say grasshoppers. Sorry to say that, but it's not exactly true. Back in 1874, during a hot summer in Kansas, things took a strange turn. Grasshoppers, or should I say locusts, invaded the Great Plains like nobody's business. They came down like a storm, blanketing houses, trees, and even poor trains passing by. These bugs were on a mission to cause chaos. Farmers had to scramble to protect their wells and just about anything else worth saving. Locusts landed everywhere, wreaking havoc on everything in sight. Even poor sheep lost their wool. Locusts even stripped paint off wagons and handles off pitchforks. This is how destructive they were. Livestock tried to fight back by eating them, but there were just too many of these insects. That year, those critters caused about $200 million in crop damage. The locust invasion was so tough, even the US Army stepped in to help. In the end, locusts began to disappear, sparing the plains from further devastation. Natural disasters can be even more unexpected than radiation blasts from space and locust invasions. Check this out. Back in June 2017, a reindeer herder up in northwest Siberia was minding their own business when they suddenly heard a crazy loud blast and saw smoke shooting up from the ground. If that happened to me, I'd need to change my pants. Sorry. Later on, they found this huge hole that was like 23 feet wide and nearly 65 feet deep and was surrounded by chunks of ice and dirt. It turned out that there were over 17 such black holes in the area. They were filled with peaty water and shrouded in mystery. Some folks thought those were sinkholes. Others were sure they were left by top-secret device tests or even a bunch of meteorites. Now, the latest idea is that these holes are actually craters caused by the Arctic warming up and melting the frozen ground. The theory states that as the ground thaws, gas pockets trapped beneath the surface burst through, creating such dramatic holes. Apparently, these eerie craters have been showing up in specific spots in Siberia where ancient geological faults have been leaking out hot natural gas for ages. Combine that with some leftover methane from old lake sediments, And you've got a recipe for some explosive surprises as the planet heats up. Not scared yet? Alright, maybe you're afraid of darkness, huh? If so, you wouldn't like it back in 536. It's the year when the world went through a crazy 18-month period of darkness. A mysterious fog covered Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, blocking out the sun and causing chaos. It was like the Dark Ages, but for real. It turns out that the main culprit behind this fog was a volcanic eruption in Iceland. This eruption spread ash across the northern hemisphere, causing temperatures to drop and crops to fail. People were freezing and starving. It was a mess. Historians from back in the day even talked about how weird it was. The sun looked like the moon, summers were freezing cold, and even China had summer snow. It was all because of the volcanic ash blocking out the sun. And to make things even worse, this period of darkness sparked the beginning of the bubonic plague in 541. Talk about a rough time to be alive. Let's go back to Siberia real quick. Back in 1908, way out in the wilds of Siberia, an asteroid dropped for an unexpected visit. Today, we know it as the Tunguska asteroid, but it didn't get its name instantly. Local folks only caught a glimpse of the show. A bright fireball streaking across the sky, followed by a massive boom. Trees went flying, fires blazed, and animals weren't too happy about it either. But since the area was so remote, not many folks took notice. For almost 2 decades, nobody bothered to check out the Tunguska site. People had too much on their plates back then. But then, scientists finally made it out there and found evidence of the asteroid's shenanigans. Later in expeditions, they found some spacey microparticles. Fast forward to now, and NASA has a whole planetary defense thing going on. They even sent a mission to test out asteroid deflecting tech. Because who knows when the next cosmic rock will come knocking on our door, right? In the middle of the 19th century, there was one more epic solar storm called the Carrington event. It may not sound like a big deal to you, but it had pretty rough consequences. The next day after the storm, Earth was hit with this insane geomagnetic storm that threw telegraphs off the rails and brought auroras to the tropics. And it's the place where they normally never show up. Turns out, all this space weather madness started with weird stuff happening on the sun's surface, like sunspots. From these spots, solar flares and other crazy electromagnetic stuff can pop out and mess with our technology. Massive solar storms like this one can shoot out from the sun at speeds of up to 1,800 miles per second. They can contain billions of tons of solar material, complete with a sassy little magnetic field that loves to mess with Earth's magnetic field when they meet. Now, listen closely. We're getting close to the next solar maximum in 2025, so it's a good time to check out the history of the worst solar storms, like the Carrington event, and take notice. Imagine if a similar storm hit today. An internet apocalypse, anyone? Businesses would be sent offline and we'd be facing some serious damages. Luckily, these mega solar storms don't happen very often. But hey, space weather is tricky to predict, so who knows when the next one will hit?
Floods, tornadoes, tsunamis, hurricanes, yikes. All these natural disasters can get extremely dangerous, but we're kind of familiar with them. But how about a natural disaster that has never happened before, but could occur any moment now? It might be a super eruption. That's what happens when a supervolcano erupts. You might know that Yellowstone Park is located on top of a supervolcano. The last massive eruption there happened about 664,000 years ago, and the one before that, approximately 1.3 million years ago. If we do the math, we'll understand that the next eruption might be due anytime soon. There's no strong evidence that the supervolcano is waking up or preparing for an eruption, but what would it be like if it did happen? Months before the eruption, small-scale earthquakes would become more frequent and more powerful in the area. Not long before the eruption, the growing pressure would push up the ground over the volcano, creating a dome. Narrow cracks would open along the edges of this dome. The magma would then start rising toward the surface, and then the eruption would kick off. A massive column of lava and ash would shoot up into the air to a height of over 16 miles. The volcano would keep pumping ash for days on end. The air in that area would heat up to 570 degrees Fahrenheit. For all living creatures, ash fallout would be one of the most dangerous consequences of the eruption. Buildings and trees would start collapsing under the weight of this dense substance. It would only take a couple of days for a 10-foot layer of ash to cover the territory of about 50 miles around the center of the eruption. After the ash got into the stratosphere, the temperatures all over the world would start to drop. The eruption would also be rich in sulfur, and this element is an effective sun blocker. That's why it would soon get so cold that there would be no summer in the whole world for the next several years. The monsoon seasons would change. It would be hard for animals to find food and clean water. Well now, how about a gamma ray burst? You don't stumble across this kind of radiation in your everyday life. A gamma ray burst occurs when two neutron stars collide. The collapse of a massive star can produce it too. Gamma rays could present a serious danger to Earth. If a gamma ray burst happened close to our home planet, it could rip our ozone layer away. After that, we would be left unprotected from the sun's ultraviolet radiation. Plus, gamma rays could also produce ground ozone. This kind of ozone could seep into the ocean since it's water-soluble, and that would lead to a mass extinction of marine life. Plants wouldn't survive this disaster either. Now, come to think of it, giant sinkholes could swallow entire communities. One of such sinkholes opened up in the city of New York. It pulled a parked van into the earth. That happened in the summer of 2022. And it wasn't the only sinkhole to appear in that area. Local inhabitants reported about 4,000 sinkholes all over the city. This kind of problem is also very common in Florida, and it's much more serious than it may sound. Sinkholes open all of a sudden, pulling down everything and everyone that happens to be nearby. Sinkholes appear all over the world, which makes them a global problem. They're totally unpredictable and form without warning. Luckily, experts know what causes them. In some areas, there are vast areas of groundwater. But during droughts, this water dries up. This creates large empty caverns, and after heavy rains, the surface over such a cavern can collapse, creating a sinkhole within minutes. Now, what if we came across a wandering black hole? You might know that a black hole is a region in space where gravity is so powerful that not even light can escape its clutches. Luckily, the nearest one to us is 1,500 light-years away. Nothing to worry about, right? Until you find out about wandering black holes. Now, things get definitely way creepier. If such a black hole entered the solar system, Earth would be doomed. We wouldn't stand a chance against this space monster. In 2012, 13 wandering black holes were spotted not so far away from our planet. But worry not. Not far away, in space terms, means around 1 billion light-years away. So we've got some time left. Plus, the possibility of such a disaster is very, very low. Another natural disaster we haven't experienced yet is a mega flood. It's never happened before, but the changes in climate do make for a risky potential. It could start, let's say, in California. This state experienced some really bad flooding in the past. One of such floods stretched up to 60 miles across and 300 miles long. If a similar disaster happened these days, it would cause $1 trillion worth of damage. It would also uproot millions of people. Now let's talk about a hypercane. Judging from the name, this natural disaster might get extreme. A hypercane is a theoretical hurricane of unsurpassed power. It would occur if the ocean became overheated as a result of climate change, or because of a massive volcanic eruption. In any case, these conditions could create a hurricane that would stretch way beyond the lower stratosphere. And as you may guess, regular hurricanes don't do that. The hypercane speed would reach 500 miles per hour. The pressure inside would be low enough not to let the hypercane to wear out as quickly as other hurricanes. The hypercane could last for weeks on end. But the worst thing? It could damage or even destroy part of Earth's ozone layer, and the hole could be the size of the entire North American continent. Now, this disaster did happen before. About 66 million years ago. I bet you know what I'm hinting at. Yep, that very meteor that supposedly wiped out dinosaurs off the face of the Earth. This 7-mile-wide space visitor was traveling at 67,000 miles per hour. As a result of the collision, 75% of all life on the planet disappeared, and winter reigned on Earth for 18 months. Want to know a secret? Meteors strike Earth all the time. Even more of them barely miss our planet. But it's also very hard to predict meteor strikes. Scientists miss a lot of them until they just nearly miss us. That's why experts are working on an early warning system that could prevent disasters. It could make meteor impacts less catastrophic, or at least allow people time to evacuate. It could also be our very own sun that would be responsible for another natural disaster. I'm talking about a massive solar flare. On the scale of damage to society, few catastrophes can compare to this event. It wouldn't destroy buildings like a tsunami or an earthquake. Neither would it end lives in the same way a supervolcano or meteor would. But it would cripple our entire way of life by destroying the whole electronic infrastructure of Earth. The cost of this disaster would reach trillions of dollars. It'd cause other infrastructures to fail. Communication, medicine, transportation, banking systems, those would tumble like dominoes, and it would be incredibly hard to recover them. Earth would be left without electricity for years. There would be no electric light, no computers, no phones. Water supply systems would be out of order. There would be no food in supermarkets. There would be no electricity, and people wouldn't be able to reboot the already broken power grids. In 1859, people all over the world woke up in the middle of the night. It was as light as during the day. The skies were illuminated with auroras, red, green, purple. They appeared even in the regions where no one had seen them before, like the Bahamas, Jamaica, or Hawaii. Telegraphs got electrically charged, even though they were disconnected. In many areas, fires started. That was when technology barely existed. But imagine the avalanche of problems a solar flare could cause today. Hurricanes can be a lot scarier than we often realize, especially since they can actually trigger earthquakes. This surprising and frightening phenomenon, known as stormquakes, was discovered completely by accident not too long ago. It started with scientists trying to find out more about low-frequency earthquakes. We're talking about those earthquakes that are so weak that we can't actually feel the tremor. See, beneath our feet, the Earth is constantly vibrating in subtle, unceasing ways that we can't hear or see without the right equipment. This geologic hum, so to speak, is driven by the movement of oceans, which covers about 70% of our planet's surface. Scientists have found that this hum may actually provide useful records of environmental happenings. To figure out where it's coming from, experts used equipment known as seismometers. You can think of these devices as little ears pressed to the ground. They can pick up all sorts of vibrations, like fans jumping up and down at their idol's concert, airplanes flying by, or even super distant earthquakes shaking the ground. Very low-frequency earthquakes are hard to track over long distances because the signals they produce can look different on different measuring devices. To solve this problem, experts came up with a way to track these signals by combining readings from smaller areas, kind of like putting together a puzzle. But while doing this, they stumbled upon a strange set of events that looked a bit like the earthquakes they were studying, but were not exactly the same. The first weird thing they noticed was that this specific phenomenon was seasonal. It never happened between May and August, for example. That is completely different from earthquakes, which can pretty much happen any time of the year. The second strange thing is that earthquakes usually occur more in the western part of the United States, where the ground moves along cracks in the surface. But these new strange vibrations spread not just along the west coast of North America, but also over to the east side. So what could be triggering this new phenomenon? What they surprisingly discovered is that many of these tremors coincided with the same time that massive storms hit North America. So we are essentially talking about a chain reaction. What happens is that during a specific season, hurricanes or heavy storms can transfer energy into the oceans, creating very strong waves. These waves then interact with the solid Earth, producing intense seismic activity. These bursts of energy that are born from massive storms can radiate thousands of miles across continents, leading to what we now call stormquakes. It is believed that this phenomenon can trigger earthquakes at a magnitude of up to 3.5 on the Richter scale. This means it can be felt by many people, but normally doesn't cause any damage. But that doesn't mean we can all be relaxed now, as ocean waters can indeed increase the intensity of hurricanes. Just like what happened with the frightening Hurricane Milton, which recently left a path of destruction across Florida. The blue-purplish zone you're looking at is Hurricane Milton, seen from a satellite perspective. On October 9th, this hurricane sustained winds of 155 miles per hour and lashed the region with heavy rainfall, damaging winds, and life-threatening storm surges. Estimates show that the losses could be up to $34 billion, which could make it one of the costliest storms in United States history. What happened with Hurricane Milton was pretty tricky. It all started with some record hot water in the Gulf of Mexico. That warm water acted like a power-up, giving this hurricane the energy it needed to grow. And then, there was also this process called eye wall replacement that helped it get bigger too. We'll get to that in a moment. So as Hurricane Milton approached the coast, something unusual happened. It crossed paths with a fast-moving air current called the jet stream, which flows high up in the atmosphere. Now normally, the winds in the northern and northwest parts of a hurricane are not as strong as those in other areas. But because of this interaction with the jet stream, the winds in these parts of the storm became much stronger than expected. At nearly every turn, Hurricane Milton surprised everyone and intensified faster than we have seen in ages. It threatened to slam both Florida's west and east coasts with a dangerous surge of water, putting the bustling area of Tampa Bay, which is home to over 3 million people, at serious risk. So how did Milton become such a major problem? Well, the problem started in the eastern Pacific Ocean. Usually, hurricanes follow a fairly predictable path, spinning off of Africa's coast, sailing across the Atlantic, and gaining strength in the warm Caribbean waters. But Milton had a twist in its origin story. It began as the remnants of a tropical depression that crossed over the Yucatan Peninsula and met a stalled front in the Gulf. Once Milton got going, it didn't hold back. But when it hit those record-high ocean temperatures, it was like giving it an energy drink. The warm water and humid air were the perfect ingredients for a hurricane on the rise. Quickly, Milton's wind speeds increased by 92 miles per hour. So it went from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane in less than 2 days, which is basically insane and off the charts. And if that wasn't enough, Hurricane Milton also went through this thing called eye wall replacement. Now, hurricanes spin around a mostly clear eye in the center. But overnight, Milton started forming new bands of rain on its outer edges, creating a second ring around its eye. This process helped Milton grow even bigger, spreading out the wind speeds and giving it a larger footprint. It's kind of like shedding its skin and getting ready to become even more powerful. Hurricane Milton also had this little wobble in its path, which changed where it was heading. You can think of it like a spinning top that gets nudged and wobbles a bit before finding its balance again. That wobble meant some areas could get either hit hard or be spared from the worst of the storm. Thankfully, Hurricane Milton weakened a bit because of some tricky wind changes up in the atmosphere until it finally made landfall. After that, it moved across the peninsula and headed out to sea, quickly losing strength as it pulled away from the warmer waters. Now, even though the damage was significant, the good news, if you can call it that, is that experts were honestly expecting things to be way worse. Still, it raises a question. How close was Milton's wind speed to the maximum? Or, in other words, is there a limit to how strong a hurricane can get? Well, the answer is yes, there is a speed limit for hurricane winds, but it's not a set number. Right now, the strongest a storm can get is around 200 miles per hour. But that maximum speed can change depending on many factors, like the heat in the ocean. Think of the ocean as the fuel for hurricanes. The warmer the water, the more fuel these storms have to work with. Experts believe that as the oceans continue to warm, they can ramp up the wind speeds and the impacts of hurricanes, making them a lot stronger. But other things can also help figure out how intense a hurricane can get. For example, the heat in the air and the temperature at the top of the clouds matter, as they also affect how fast heat moves from the ocean surface to the top of the storm. Some estimates suggest that maximum wind speeds could reach closer to 220 miles per hour until the end of the century. So it's definitely something that experts need to keep an eye on to help prevent future disasters. As we move forward, it's essential to keep researching and studying these storms. The more we understand them, the better we can protect ourselves and our communities. Finally, the thunderstorm has passed, and it's all sunny again. No clouds in sight, no need to spend the day indoors, after all. Suddenly, a lightning bolt slams into a tree just 100 feet away. Whoa, what just happened? Can storms be invisible? Is Thor fighting someone near your home? No. This is an exceedingly rare but very real weather phenomenon that scientists call bolts from the blue. Sounds unbelievable and a bit scary? Well, today I'm talking about nature's weirdest and deadliest jump scares. But first, back to science class for a second. What causes thunderstorms and lightning in the first place? On a sunny day, the ground gets toasty and the air near it heats up. As this warm, moist air rises, it enters colder layers of the atmosphere. The moisture condenses into tiny water droplets, and when they gather, well done, now we have a big puffy cloud. But sometimes the rising air just won't stop. It keeps going until you get one of those towering thunderclouds called cumulonimbus. Inside them, it's chaos. Raindrops, ice chunks, and water are tossed around like they're in a big sky blender. When those little bits bump into each other, they trade tiny electrical charges. All that bumping and crashing swaps those charges until the whole cloud turns into a charged-up battery. Positive up top, negative down below, ground buzzing underneath. Then, boom! The imbalance breaks and a lightning bolt tears through the sky. In a split second, it superheats the air to around 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hotter than the surface of the sun. The air explodes outward so fast that it creates a shock wave, and that's the starting sound of thunder that wakes up your dog. Normally, all this happens right under the storm. Since it can look scary, you know it's time to run inside. However, lightning doesn't always like these rules, and that's when we get the so-called bolts from the blue. Under normal lightning, these launch from the very top of a storm, travel sideways through the upper atmosphere, and then dive down, sometimes up to 30 miles away. They can be extremely dangerous. That's why experts recommend the 30-30 rule. If lightning and thunder are less than 30 seconds apart, get inside and wait 30 minutes after the last rumble. This all sounds frightening, but remember, the odds of being struck by lightning are already incredibly small. And when it comes to a bolt from the blue, it's so rare that scientists don't even have enough data to calculate the odds. Now, most lightning stays within 10 miles of the storm where it originated. When it travels more than 60 miles, we call that a mega flash. In 2017, scientists recorded one spanning 510 miles from Texas to near Kansas City, twice as wide as California. Now, let's talk about another weather-related surprise that comes out of nowhere. They are called dry microbursts, bursts of air that can cause chaos. Here's how it works. High up in the thunderstorm, raindrops begin to fall. But as they drop through a layer of very dry air, something strange happens. They evaporate before reaching the ground, and when that happens, it cools the surrounding air really fast. Now, that cold air is suddenly way heavier than the air below it, so it drops like a rock, picking up speed as it falls. These wind blasts can reach speeds of over 100 miles an hour, hit an area less than 3 miles wide, and last only 5 to 15 minutes. But in that time, they can flatten trees and hurl dust like a low-flying sandstorm. That hurricane-force wind blasts straight downward from the clouds, then slams into the ground and spreads out in all directions like a mini shockwave, like the ground was hit by an invisible air meteor. Such microbursts are especially dangerous for airplanes during takeoff and landing. A sudden downward burst of air can tilt, destabilize, or even flip a plane if it's low enough. First, the outflow gives it a tailwind, making the plane lift. But just seconds later, the wind shifts to a powerful headwind, cutting lift and forcing the plane down dangerously fast. In other words, it gets pushed forward, then slammed down, then slowed down too much, all while it's trying to land. The pilot only has a few seconds to react, and there's not much room under the plane to recover. It's like the sky's just changing its mind 3 times in a row, and the plane gets caught in the middle. Microbursts were once such a mystery that pilots had almost no defense. But after several major accidents in the 1980s, studying them became a top priority in meteorology. Today, airports use Doppler radar and wind shear alerts to catch them before they occur. For the next weather trap, imagine yourself walking through a peaceful valley at sunset. The air is still, the sky is clear, everything feels calm, almost too calm. Then, suddenly, the temperature drops in just a few minutes. You actually feel the cold sliding down the hills like fog, creeping along the ground and pulling around your ankles like an invisible air creature with cold hands. Your breath becomes visible, your hands start to burn from the chill, and you just stand there confused. This phenomenon is called the cold air pool. Basically, when the sun goes down, the ground cools fast. The air right above it cools too. Cold air is heavier than warm air, so it slides downhill like invisible water. If you're in a valley, basin, or any kind of bowl-shaped area, that cold air settles at the bottom and just sits there because there's no wind to push it away. If the skies are clear, the air keeps getting colder and colder overnight. And since the cold air can't escape the valley, the temperature can plummet to record lows, even if places just a few miles away have perfectly normal temperatures. This isn't just chilly, it can be life-threatening. In winter, this effect is stronger and more dangerous because from the beginning, the air is already cold, so we have extreme lows. In a place called Park Sinks, Utah, temperatures have dropped as low as minus 69 degrees. That's colder than some parts of Antarctica. And it happens without warning. One moment it's sweater weather, and a few minutes later it's, man, I hope I still have fingers. If cold air pools are like nature's freezer, then strudels are its drain holes. They form in spring when snowmelt floods river deltas over sea ice. The incoming freshwater floods the surface, finds cracks or weak spots, and drains downward in narrow jets. Think of vertical whirlpools cutting through the ice. This drainage is driven not by salty water trickling up, but by the pressure of the flooded layer pressing through cracks and seal breathing holes. From above, they spin into perfect spirals, almost too pretty for something that can rip through sea ice. These jets can dig into the seafloor, creating holes that can be several feet deep. This is risky if you're on the ice and could be a problem for any underwater pipelines nearby. Terrifying if you're too close, but mesmerizing if you could see them from above. Now these weather quirks are interesting, but there are more. Ever heard of ball lightning? A glowing orb floating across your room, humming, and then pop. No one really knows how it works, but it's been spotted on planes and in kitchens. Then there are sprites and blue jets, bolts of lightning that shoot upward from storms into the stratosphere like sky tentacles or neon jellyfish. Gorgeous, spooky, and visible only from above. Not to forget Haboob, a massive wall of dust that rolls across the desert like it's auditioning for a disaster movie. One minute it's sunny, The next it's midnight at noon, with grit on your teeth and sand in your eyebrows. But these are for some other time. The bottom line is, nature is beautiful and unpredictable. Sometimes it launches a lightning bolt from a sunny sky, or turns calm weather into a down-blasting wind hammer. So, next time you complain about the bad weather, remember, at least it's not trying to ambush you with unexpected freezing or bolts of lightning without clouds and rain in sight. Good luck!
Nature can ruin your life with a tsunami, hurricane, tornado, rainstorm, and many other destructive events. But did you know that it also has other, weirder ways to destroy? Let's take a look at the most unusual natural phenomena. How about the orange rain? It's not that orange drops are falling on you, no, the whole sky and the atmosphere are turning dark orange. Orange clouds are pouring dirty orange drops on you. Don't worry, they're not poisonous, but watch your eyes. Don't let the drops get in because they contain sand particles. If you want to see this unusual phenomenon, go to the Canary Islands. Every year, the sky turns orange there and pours orange-red drops of water mixed with sand onto the ground. This phenomenon happens because of the Sahara. In the desert, strong winds blow millions of tons of dust and sand into the air. All this mess penetrates the atmosphere and turns the sky orange. Then, the particles from the Sahara fly toward the Canary Islands and fall on people in the form of heavy rain. Residents of this region experience breathing problems and poor vision in the orange conditions. Airports stop working. All flights are canceled. Under favorable conditions, a storm that carries sand particles can reach both the Mediterranean and Northern Europe. Therefore, if you suddenly see red rain, don't be scared. This is not the apocalypse. Warning, this kind of rain causes anxiety. During this phenomenon, you won't see drops of water. There will be spiders falling from the sky. People have faced spider rains in Australia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. These creatures are called money spiders, or sheet web weavers. During strong winds, they climb as high as possible to the tops of plants, bushes, and fences. Then, they release a parachute-shaped web, and the wind blows them into the sky. They fly high into the air, meeting birds, cold winds, and harsh weather. Not everyone can survive this journey. Then, when the weather calms down, this tiny party lands on the ground. No one knows why spiders behave this way. According to one version, they fly away from places where flooding can begin. In other words, it's a forced migration. And because of this migration, spiders often become the first settlers of territories that have been destroyed by fires or other natural phenomena. But don't worry, these creatures are harmless to humans. They just want to live and multiply. Although, to be honest, it's hard to stay calm when thousands of arthropods are falling on your head. Tornadoes are a destructive force. But look at this. A whirlwind appears during a snowstorm. It's sucking in more and more snow. Now, it's not just a tornado, but a snow-nado. It looks like something terrible and destructive, but don't worry, it's not as scary as it seems. This is a fairly rare disaster that has recently occurred in Utah. The snow tornado came across a man and his dog on its way. It looked impressive and dangerous. Fortunately, no one got hurt. This phenomenon occurs when an air vortex raises snow from the ground. If you see a similar vortex next to you, don't panic. Usually, such phenomena are harmless and don't have enough force to destroy things. This natural phenomenon is much more dangerous than the snow-nado. Just imagine that a mountain of chunks of ice is moving along roads, sweeping away everything in its path. It looks like a tsunami, but instead of water, there are ice boulders. The ice tsunami can destroy houses, cars, and trees. It can move on grass, asphalt, and sand. It can jump out of the water like a crazy salmon. Fortunately, the ice tsunami is not a frequent phenomenon. It occurs when three conditions are met: a flat coast, loose ice, and strong wind. Waves and wind are throwing broken pieces of ice onto the shore. These ice flows accumulate into a huge wall, and then, during strong winds, this ice monster begins to move. Therefore, if you see a large pile of ice near the water, move away from this place as far as possible. And we're back to the tornado again. You already know about snow tornadoes. You've probably seen the footage of tornadoes in a desert when the wind blows sand into the air in documentaries. Tornadoes pass over the ocean's surface and can create a funnel inside the water. But there's a phenomenon that's even cooler and more impressive. It's a fire tornado. Surely not many of you have heard about this thing. It's a very dangerous phenomenon, but people have ventured close to the fiery tornado to study it. But firefighters, by the way, often encounter this devastating phenomenon. A fire tornado forms during forest fires, and sometimes it can appear inside a burning building. If you see a big flame and feel a strong wind, be careful. A fiery funnel may form. But how does this happen? Let's first look at the origin of an ordinary tornado. So, we're somewhere in a dry place in the middle of a hot day. The sun heats the air that is close to the ground. Its lower layers absorb more energy than the upper ones. An increase in temperature makes this air less dense and more buoyant. Then it lifts into the sky in the form of long columns. This rise has a spiral movement. The water in your bathtub moves similarly when it flows through the drain hole. So many of these air vortices are quite weak, and you can't see them. But some of them encounter strong air currents. This accelerates their movement, adds energy, and increases the area. More and more air gets into this vortex, making it stronger. When dust and sand get into these whirlwinds, you see a tornado. The fire tornado follows the same pattern, with only one difference. The air below is heated, not by the sun, but by fire. Fire heats the air, it rises, rotates, and pulls the fire inside. Some of the vortices can reach up to 400 feet high and 50 feet wide. It's like a thin, leaning tower of Pisa made of fire, only twice as tall. This is a truly devastating and terrifying phenomenon. The ground is shaking. Flocks of birds are flying away. You can hear a loud, low rumble. The volcano spits out a giant ash cloud. Lava is flowing from the mouth of the fiery mountain. Rivers of fire are running down and dashing towards you. You have nowhere to escape. The fire is getting closer and closer and… Wait a minute. This lava isn't hot. It's cold. How is that possible? You can observe cold lava flows near many volcanoes. In Indonesia, for example, this phenomenon has recently destroyed entire villages. Yes, it's not hot, but it's still dangerous. Cold lava streams occur when hot lava mixes with ash, sand, and pebbles during wet weather. In a sense, the volcano spews out streams of heavy mud. It covers roads, houses, cars, and trees. Cold lava flows are a destructive phenomenon, so stay away from them. Even if some volcano is very beautiful and you want to take cool photos, don't take any chances. Okay, let's relax a little and end our video with something fun. How about surfing? But instead of ordinary waves, we have icy ones. This phenomenon is called the ice wave. It looks as if someone paused a wave while it was forming before it hit the water. It's a rare occurrence, but you can find it on Mount Washington. The top of the mountain is shrouded in fog most of the year. Cold temperatures, humidity, and winds form frost. Then strong winds force this frost sideways, and thus a wavy shape forms. And when there's a wave, you can ski or snowboard inside, like a surfboard. But be careful, it's pretty cold in there, so wear warm clothes. If you were visiting Earth from another planet, your rational mind just wouldn't understand how singing dunes and moving balls of lightning were scientifically possible. I bet you'll feel like these images are just stills from your favorite sci-fi movie. You better hope you never find yourself alone near Catatumbo River in Venezuela during one of its lightning storms. Because if you were, you'd be surprised to find out that lightning works both ways, meaning it can come from the sky and from the ground. Terrifying, I know. Scientists think that in this case, it probably happens because of a high presence of uranium in the bedrock. But it can also happen due to cold and warm air currents that meet around that area. This makes the electric field get all charged up and the bolt flips, traveling from ground to cloud. Scientists even have a fancy name for it: upward lightning. This special place, called Catatumbo River, became famous because of its light shows. Actually, the name means House of Thunder in the local language. This phenomenon happens for up to 160 nights a year, and it can last around 9 hours a day. When scientists counted, they realized that the area could produce anything from 16 to 40 flashes of lightning per minute. Now, you've probably heard of Marco Polo, the 13th century Venetian merchant and world traveler. Well, in one of his voyages, he came across what he could only describe as singing dunes. The dunes literally started rumbling, like they were playing drums, and freaked him out so much he thought it was the works of evil, invisible entities messing with him. Fast forward to our times, and scientists have discovered how sand dunes produce these rumbles. A team of scientists studied a singing dune in Morocco. They chose a large, crescent-shaped one that makes noise all year round. If the wind is right, this dune can sing a few times every afternoon. It turns out that the wind forces sand to accumulate at the top of the dune until the angle of the slope reaches a tipping point of about 35 degrees. This accumulated sand drops down like an avalanche, and that's what produces a sound. The sand needs to be dry enough for the singing to happen, though. They're like nature's boombox. Isn't that something? This next one might be the most disturbing of them all. First, you'll see a flash of lightning, then a thundering boom, and finally, a curious light floating through the air and bouncing off surfaces like a white electric ball. Would you also hide under your blanket if you witnessed something like this? That's what an old lady did when she witnessed this from bed in her Chicago apartment. It turns out, people have been swapping their own ball lightning stories for hundreds of years. An English monk's report from the early 1000s might be the oldest version of these accounts. It talks about a fiery globe descending from a storm cloud and falling into the river Thames. The thing is, scientists aren't entirely sure what causes it, but one theory involves lightning striking silica-rich soil. This can vaporize silica, creating tiny particles bound by electrical charges. When these particles react with oxygen, they produce glowing orbs, which can last a few seconds. Some other theories say that it can be linked to miniature black holes, or even hallucinations. But the silica explanation is the best contender so far. What they know for sure is that ball lightning is often linked to stormy weather. If you'd wake up in the middle of a wintry night and saw these lights, you'd probably think otherworldly people were invading our world. Or you'd feel like one of the lucky people who got to see the northern lights during your lifetime. But none are correct. These beautiful shafts of pastel-colored light were photographed by a guy in Ontario, Canada. They happen when tiny, flat ice crystals that usually reside up in the atmosphere float closer to the ground. They're sometimes called columns of violet light, and they reflect light from sources like streetlights or cars. These reflections stretch into tall, colorful columns that look like they're glowing in the sky. The best part is that it's mostly an optical illusion. The pillars aren't really in the air. They're just a trick of light bouncing off the ice. Somewhere near Buffalo, New York, you'll find a surreal combination of the fire and water elements. This phenomenon is called the Eternal Flame Falls, precisely because it never stops burning, even if it's so near the water. This is due to a chemical reaction where gas leaks out of the ground and combusts with the air. It's one out of a few hundred natural eternal flames around the world. But the 30 feet tall waterfall is probably the most beautiful one. Now, how does it get lit the first time around? Usually, eternal flames can be ignited by lightning, human activity, or something called piezoelectricity, which is basically when certain materials make electricity when you squeeze, press, or twist them. Scientists believe that Native Americans lit these flames thousands of years ago, but that's just a hunch. Have you ever imagined going for a midnight swim? and suddenly finding yourself surrounded by a glowing blue haze? As if there were huge cannons of light coming out of the seabed directly into the surface. This phenomenon is rare, but it sure is magical. This chemical reaction is known as bioluminescence, and it can happen in different situations. One example is when tiny algae organisms migrate near the seashores. When these algae are disturbed, they try to defend themselves by glowing, and just happen to create the most beautiful spectacle. There's also a specific place in the world where you can see a similar phenomenon. It's in New Zealand. Hidden deep within the country's caves lie the so-called glowworms. They are the larval species of a fungus that happen to be luminescent. If you're lucky enough to tour around these caves, you'll feel like you're floating inside an underground galaxy. The sky can create lots of different cool phenomena, and this specific one is called a crown flash. If you were seeing it with your own eyes, you'd see a column of light jumping or dancing near the top of a cumulus nimbus cloud. Think of cumulus nimbus as massive, towering clouds that look like fluffy mountains. These are the clouds that usually announce thunderstorms, lightning, and heavy rain. Now, although you'd probably think crown flashes looked like some supernatural energetic door opening to the heavens, this is a very scientific phenomenon. It happens when sunlight reflects off tiny ice crystals inside the cloud. But here's the cool part. Those ice crystals aren't just floating around randomly. They're moving because of shifts in the cloud's electric field. As the field changes, the ice crystals realign, and the light they reflect moves too. That's why the crown flash looks like it's flickering or waving. Crown flashes don't happen all the time. You need a thundercloud with the right conditions, lots of sunlight, ice crystals, and a strong electric field. If you ever spot one, consider yourself lucky. It's like nature showing off a rare light trick. We usually see ever-burning hills in sci-fi movies, but this one is real. Located in the Arctic region of Canada, the so-called Smoking Hills is an unmatched sight on our planet. And here, things get even a little science fiction-y, since some minerals that exist in these hills were only ever found in a few places on our planet and outside it, like on the surface of Mars. The ground of Smoking Hills has been releasing smoke for at least a couple hundred years, non-stop. Explorers thought the area was home to an active volcano, but that was not the case. As science explains, the soil in the area is formed by sulfur and coal, and when they're in contact with oxygen, they spontaneously ignite, releasing constant smoke. I just warn you, don't be getting any touristic ideas. The environment is extremely hostile to human life, as the smoke is toxic and its temperatures are dangerously high.
So in Westbrook, Maine, people saw an enormous ice disk in January 2019. This disk was like a wintry carousel. It was spinning away in the Penobscot River. Residents called it everything from an icy lazy Susan to a frozen spinning wheel. It was estimated to be around 300 feet wide, which made it one of the biggest ice disks ever seen. Weirdly, the spinning ice disk notion isn't new. They've shown up in places like Russia and Washington before. They were almost always a perfect circle. So why do they happen? Well, some scientists in 1997 thought it was because river water created a whirlpool effect around a chunk of ice, smoothing it out to be perfectly circular. Yet, in 2016, other scientists claimed that river currents helped these disks get started, but temperature changes kept them twirling. Warmer water makes the ice melt and sink, creating a vortex that keeps the disk spinning. The warmer the water, the faster it spins. Ever heard of the Hestilin lights of Norway? They aren't the same as northern lights. Think of these lights as glowing balls. They have been seen since at least the 1930s. These luminous wonders show up in all sorts of colors and shapes. Sometimes they flicker, and other times they just chill in the air. The Hestilin lights can show up 10 to 20 times a week. They appear both during the day and at night. They can last for just a few seconds or hover for over an hour. Interestingly, nobody has a clue about what exactly they are. The efforts to understand these lights include Project Hestilin, started in 1983, and later projects like the Triangle Project. Despite ongoing research, there's no consensus on the origin of the lights. Some suggested explanations include misperception of celestial bodies, aircraft, or mirages. One theory ties the lights to airborne dust from mining, while another mentions plasma formed by ionized air and dust during radon decay. Okay. Ringing rocks is a cool geological thing you probably didn't know about, and it's our next stop on the Mysterious Natural Phenomena Tour. You can find them in Bucks County in the U.S. If you give these rocks a hit with a hammer or another rock, they start ringing. Scientists have been studying them, but the mystery remains. There are different hypotheses about this one too. Things like the size and shape of the boulders and how they're stacked can affect the sounds they make. But that alone doesn't give them the ability to ring. Even though the sound is often described as metallic, it's likely because of the rock's density and internal stress, not just its iron content. A scientific experiment from the 1960s suggested that the ringing ability came from some internal stress, not external weathering. The live rocks found in the middle of boulder fields showed expansion or relaxation after being cut, indicating internal elastic stresses. A slow weathering rate in dry fields could cause these stresses. The relic stress theory suggests that these boulders act like guitar strings. A de-stressed boulder gives a dull thud, but a stressed one resonates at different frequencies. The boulders can still ring when removed from their fields, leading to myths about stealing them. Most fields are now cleared of smaller ringers, and breaking large boulders stops the ringing. Large equipment is needed to move the remaining small ringers, weighing over a ton. Now let's talk about the Naga fireballs. They only show up along the Mekong River in Asia. These picky fireballs hang out in just a 155-mile stretch of the river. The reddish glowing balls rise naturally from the water into the air. Their scope ranges from small particles to the size of a basketball. The reported number of fireballs varies from tens to thousands per night. They can be spotted all year round, but they seem to go wild during the full moon in late autumn. Why? Well, that's just another one of their little mysteries. Some have tried to explain the phenomenon scientifically. One theory suggests that flammable phosphine gas from the marshy environment could be the cause. However, skeptics argue that spontaneous ignition isn't likely to be the reason. Another scientific explanation involves free-floating plasma orbs created when surface electricity is discharged into a solution. Still, these typically occur in controlled settings during experiments, and not naturally. We can carry on with ball lightning. It's a super rare thing, a glowing ball that shows up in the air. It likes to make an appearance close to the ground during thunderstorms, hanging out with regular lightning. It can be red, orange, yellow, white, or blue, and it's often accompanied by a hissing sound and a funky smell. This flashy sphere of light is a quick show. It lasts just a few seconds, zooming around, and then poof, it's gone, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a little pop. Ball lightning might seem like a troublemaker, but it's usually harmless. Sure, it's been known to burn or melt stuff on occasion, but it's not out to get us. Scientists aren't entirely sure why it happens or how it's related to regular lightning. People have been tossing around ideas like weird air or gas behavior, high-density plasma stuff, or even a vortex of glowing gases. Even microwave radiation trapped in a plasma bubble is on the list. But don't get it confused with bead lightning. That's a different one, more like a string of beads. And it happens when a bolt of lightning sticks around for a good chunk of a second. Shh! We're now at the Mapimi Silent Zone. It's this spot near this place in Mexico. The story goes that in this desert patch, you can't pick up any radio signals or talk to anyone. In July 1970, a rocket from Utah went off course and landed here. It was carrying some sort of cobalt. Authorities had to haul away tons of soil from the crash site. Now, thanks to the cleanup, the Silent Zone is wrapped up in myths. People talk about weird magnetic stuff, messing with radios, and about plants and critters going through mutations. Well, locals go with it, boosting tourism in the region. Alright, we can now talk a bit about the sun. Well, it's not just a big ball of fire. It's got an outer layer called the corona. Think of it as an invisible sun jacket made of gases. You usually can't see it because the sun is super bright. But there's a trick. During a total solar eclipse, when the moon slides between us and the sun, the corona shows up, all glowing and white. The corona is scorching hot, even hotter than the sun's surface, which is kinda weird. Scientists are on a mission to crack this heat mystery. They found something called heat bombs shooting from the sun into the corona, exploding and warming things up even more. But that might be just one piece of the puzzle. You see, the sun's surface is like a playground covered in magnetic fields. These magnetic fields create cool shapes on the sun, like loops and streamers. Special telescopes help us see these cool patterns up close. The corona stretches way out into space, and from there, it sends out the solar wind that moves through our solar system. Its particles are so speedy that they escape the sun's gravity. So, there's this cool spot called Kuala Sangalore Beach that you can only check out when the tide is low. The timing changes every day, and you can't get there when the tide is high. Most of the time, it's hiding under the sea, not even on the map. But when the tide's just right, bam, it pops up. Kind of like Malaysia's own version of Salar de Uyuni. People call it the mirror of the sky because when it's not underwater, it turns into a giant reflection of the sky. An awesome spot for cool Instapics. Besides being a sweet travel spot, it's also home to a bunch of marine life, like sea and baby clams that live all over the sandy shores.
Living on our beautiful planet might seem safe, but only until you start thinking of all those dangers lurking just around the corner or in the vast darkness of the cosmos. Let's see what may eventually lead to the end of planet Earth. With each new potential threat, it gets more and more terrifying. Consider yourself warned. First of all, let's talk about hypercane. This natural disaster can get really extreme. A hypercane is a theoretical hurricane of unsurpassed power. It would occur if the ocean became overheated as a result of climate change, or a massive volcanic eruption could trigger it. In any case, these conditions would create a hurricane, which, unlike regular hurricanes, would stretch way beyond the lower stratosphere. The speed of such a storm would reach 500 miles per hour. The pressure inside the hypercane would be so low that it wouldn't let it wear out as quickly as other hurricanes. The hypercane could last for weeks on end. But the worst thing? It would likely damage or even destroy part of Earth's ozone layer, and the hole could be the size of the entire North American continent. Then we've got super destructive tornadoes. A tornado is a violently rotating column of air. It usually extends from a thunderstorm and is in contact with the ground. Inside a thundercloud, warm, humid air rises upward, and cool air falls down along with rain or hail. Such conditions can lead to the appearance of spinning air currents inside the cloud. Interestingly, these air currents start out horizontal, but at one point they can become vertical and drop down from the cloud, becoming a tornado. Some tornadoes are narrow, rope-like swirls, but others turn into wild funnels. Tornadoes are ranked with the help of the enhanced Fujita scale. A weak tornado normally lasts for a few minutes and doesn't move faster than 100 miles per hour. The next level is a strong tornado. Such whirlwinds can last for 20 minutes or so and have winds of up to 200 miles per hour. And then we can also have violent tornadoes. Those can last for more than an hour and move at a speed of between 200 and 300 miles per hour. On average, around 1,000 tornadoes occur in the USA every year. There's even a region that got named Tornado Alley. It's a 10-state area in the Midwest, but tornadoes can happen in any state. One of the most destructive natural disasters was the tri-state tornado in the USA. It was the world's longest-lasting single tornado that traveled 220 miles through Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. At the same time, the average tornado's path is usually no longer than 5 miles. But what if one day, a tornado much bigger and way more powerful than any we've experienced before swiped through countries and continents? It would leave behind total destruction and devastation. And how about a supercell thunderstorm? It's the least common type of thunderstorm, but it's the most dangerous. It's likely to cause severe weather, damaging winds, very large hail, and even violent tornadoes. What makes supercells unique is a deep and persistent rotating updraft called a mesocyclone. Supercells can potentially last for hours and cause great havoc. An asteroid impact could end all forms of life on Earth too. If a space wanderer was large enough, it could cause widespread devastation, like it happened with the 9-mile-wide asteroid from 66 million years ago. It's rumored to have destroyed 3/4 of the planet's plant and animal species, including dinosaurs. Depending on the asteroid's size and the speed of its approach, the impact could lead to massive fires, tsunamis, and the eternal winter effect. It happens when the debris ejected into the atmosphere blocks sunlight and disrupts the global climate. Luckily, we'd probably notice such a large asteroid coming close to our planet with the help of our equipment long before the collision and would have enough time to get rid of this threat. It would be our very own sun that would bring our world to an end. Our star is a gigantic, constantly changing ball of molten gases. Every once in a while, it spews out bursts of energy, solar flares. They often go hand in hand with something called coronal mass ejections. Those are giant bubbles of ionized gas that can accelerate to incredible speeds. The most powerful volcanic eruptions pale in comparison to solar flares that release 10 million times more energy. Within a few minutes, one solar flare can give out billions of tons of charged particles. Solar flares are also insanely hot, with the temperatures reaching several million degrees Fahrenheit. Astronomers believe that such bursts of solar radiation happen when the sun's magnetic field gets twisted in some regions. At one moment, all the pent-up energy is released. The star sends out light and particles, mostly electrons and protons. Most solar flares last for minutes, but some continue for hours. Scientists classify solar flares depending on how brightly they shine in X-rays. You aren't likely to notice the tiniest flares if you don't have special equipment. Medium solar flares lead to fleeting radio blackouts at the poles, but nothing too serious. It's X-class flares people should worry about. They cause the strongest and longest-lasting solar storms. Now, if you had gamma-ray vision, you'd be able to see immensely bright flashes. They occur every day, outshine everything around you, and then disappear again. Those flashes are gamma-ray bursts. One of them could wipe out Earth's atmosphere. The flash that might ruin our planet would most probably be born in a faraway galaxy during a merge of two collapsing stars. It would be immensely powerful and super bright. Still 1,000 light-years from Earth, it'd already shine as bright as the sun. Our planet's atmosphere would try to protect us, but its natural shield wouldn't last. The radiation would be so powerful that it would destroy the ozone layer. Without this layer, ultraviolet rays coming from the sun would be hitting Earth's surface at full force. They would wipe out tiny plankton in the ocean. But these plankton produce from 50 to 70% of all oxygen in the world. So, with their disappearance, there would be a severe lack of oxygen, which would lead to the disappearance of life on the planet. In the end, the heat and ultraviolet light coming from the sun would turn the planet into a huge chunk of rock. And what if we came across a wandering black hole? You might know that a black hole is a region in space where gravity is so powerful that not even light can escape its clutches. Luckily, the nearest to us black hole is 1,500 light-years away. It seems that we have nothing to worry about until we learn about wandering black holes. Now, things definitely get way creepier. If such a black hole entered the solar system, Earth would be doomed. We wouldn't stand a chance against this space monster. In 2020, 13 wandering black holes were spotted not so far away from our planet. But not far away in space terms means around 1 billion light-years away, so we've got some time left. Plus, the possibility of such a disaster is very, very low. One day, a rogue planet might push Earth out of the habitable zone and into an extreme orbit farther from the sun. Then, the climate all over the planet would start getting colder and colder. Don't forget that the farther our planet is from the sun, the weaker the star's gravitational pull on our planet is. In the end, our beautiful Earth would get too far away from its main source of light and heat. It would turn into a lifeless piece of rock covered with a thick layer of ice. Or the sun might expand and turn into a red giant. If it happened, it would change the entire habitable zone of our solar system. The disaster would start with our star running out of hydrogen in its core. This would trigger a chain of reactions, which would eventually lead to the core of the sun heating up and getting denser. As a result, the sun would get way larger than it is now. During this transformation, the sun would swallow Venus, Mercury, and Earth.
It may seem that today, with our quite advanced technological development, science can explain pretty much any natural phenomenon. But that's not always true. Some things still stump experts and make them build exotic theories. Let's have a look at some of such phenomena. Hessdalen lights are a puzzling phenomenon you can observe in Hessdalen Valley in central Norway. The thing is that some highly unusual lights can often be seen over the valley. They appear mostly at night. The lights are typically white, but they occasionally turn yellowish or reddish. Nobody knows what makes them change color. What's more, the lights can move. And if at one moment they seem to motionlessly hang in midair, the next minute they may travel somewhere at lightning speed. There's no certain place where they appear, and you can't predict the duration of their stay. Despite all the research that has been done since the 1980s, scientists are still unable to explain this phenomenon as well as such weird behavior of lights. The sardine run lasts from May to July. During this time, millions of sardines swim northward along South Africa's east coast. You can probably imagine a feeding frenzy that starts at that time. It's believed that the water temperature must get lower than 70 degrees Fahrenheit for the migration to begin. This mushroom with a difficult name, Corioactis gister, is only found in Japan and Texas, and it makes scientists extremely confused. Why these two locations? It's true that they're on the same latitude, but these places are definitely not the only ones. Plus, they're so far away from each other. After studying the mushroom's DNA in 2004, experts suggested that the two populations might have been separated into two lineages around 19 million years ago. On Central Flores Island, there's a 3,000-foot-high volcano called Kelimutu. At its base, there is a small town. If you want to see the main attraction of the area, you'll most definitely stay there. And the attraction I'm talking about is 3 lakes, known as the Lake of Old People, the Lake of Young Men and Maidens, and the Enchanted Lake. Why are these lakes so popular and attract so many people? They inexplicably change colors. Ancient legends claim that the lakes are the final resting place of human souls, and those souls stay in different lakes according to their actions. As for scientific research, no one has yet conducted any to discover the cause of the changing colors. But theorists suppose that it might be due to underwater volcanic activity. It might be pushing minerals to the lake's surface. Then, depending on what elements those are, the lakes can turn blood red, bright turquoise, or olive green. But the coolest thing? The lakes are never all the same color at the same time. This phenomenon is unique and hasn't been observed anywhere else in the world. Those who have ever heard an annoying noise a kettle makes to inform you the water inside is boiling can imagine what the whistle sounds like. Even though this noise isn't as blood-curdling as some other unexplained sounds, it doesn't make the whistle any less mysterious. It's incredibly elusive. In 1997, only one underwater microphone was able to pick it up. At that time, researchers didn't manage to pinpoint the source of the noise. The most likely cause of the unusual sound is an eruption of one of the submarine volcanoes. But once again, there's not enough proof to make sure. There's probably no person on Earth who doesn't marvel at the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. But not everyone knows that there is another triangle. Not so famous, but just as dangerous. Dragon's Triangle, or the Devil's Sea, lies in the area between Japan and the islands of Bonin. It covers a big part of the Philippine Sea as well. That's why people also call this place the Pacific Bermuda Triangle. Surprisingly, or not really, the Devil's Sea is situated exactly opposite the Bermuda Triangle. Ships and planes tend to disappear here with the same regularity as in the North Atlantic Triangle. People also report seeing ghost ships in the open sea. And while scientists provide logical reasons for the vanishing vessels and aircraft, most people still believe in the paranormal nature of Dragon's Triangle. For the first time, a bizarre sound later called the upsweep was registered in 1991 in the Pacific Ocean. One of the most unusual things about the sound is that it's constantly changing. It varies from high to low frequencies and then back again. You can hear it better in the spring and fall than in the winter and summer. The sound travels from the bottom of the ocean toward its surface. Scientists do have a theory explaining this phenomenon. They think it might be the activity of undersea volcanoes that causes the sound. Hot lava that's pouring into the ice-cold ocean water can theoretically produce such noise. But researchers haven't found any evidence to confirm this theory yet. On the thin Curonian spit splitting the Baltic Sea from the Curonian Lagoon, there is one of the most bizarre places on Earth. Locals call this area the Dancing Forest because pine trees in this forest have shockingly unusual shapes. They twist in spirals and circles along the ground. There are some theories why it could be happening, of course. Some people claim that huge amounts of positive and negative energies once clashed in that spot. More down-to-earth individuals believe that the reason is geological. Sandy soil in the area is too unstable to hold trees growing upright. The most popular is the idea that strong winds blowing from the water influence the shape of the trees. In any case, experts haven't come to the final conclusion yet. Potomsky Crater is described as a mount with a perfect shape. Its size is more than that of a 25-story building. It sits in the middle of the woods with its top chopped off and presents quite a sight. In fact, the shape of the crater is pretty unusual. It has a rounded inner dome that is about 40 feet high. At first sight, this formation looks like a volcano, but after a closer examination, you might realize that it's not the case. The dome in the center of the cone is extremely unusual for a volcano. In addition, there haven't been any volcanoes in this region for millions of years, while the age of the crater is estimated to be about 250 years. The weird shape that the crater has is like nothing scientists have ever seen. This, as well as the fact that any theory fails to explain the origin of the formation, adds to the mystery around it. And that's not the most terrifying thing. After researchers analyzed the growth rings of the trees near the crater, they found out that the trees experienced a period of strangely accelerated growth that lasted for 40 years. After that, they began to grow as they were supposed to. The level of radiation near the crater is also higher than in the nearby areas. No one has an explanation for this fact. On top of that, nothing grows on the blood-chilling formation. Perhaps because the crater also has a lovely habit of constant shifting. It rises and falls, influenced by some inexplicable force. Locals believe in the evil that dwells in that place. While exploring the Amazon rainforest, researchers discovered gigantic geoglyphs. They're geometrical drawings carved into the ground. The trenches were as large as 36 feet wide and 13 feet deep. They were created at different times, most between the 1st to the 15th century. There are more than 450 geoglyphs in the north of Bolivia and Brazil. The most ancient of them could have been created around 3,000 years ago. The huge earthworks were likely used for common meetings and discussions, but scientists haven't found enough proof yet.
Mother Nature is caring, loving, and providing, but sometimes she's also terrifying. These Reddit users have seen her dark and spooky side. They've been through the worst, and fortunately, they all lived to tell the tale. The question is, are you ready to face it and learn about her chilling, uncanny secrets? Now, imagine it's a beautiful Sunday, and you decide to do some gardening. You grab your tools and head outside, but once you start digging to plant some flowers, your hand touches something slippery, yet also sticky. And the worst part is, it's moving. You're shaking with fear, but find the courage to look at what it is. You become filled with a great relief, because fortunately, that's not a snake. It's an enormous earthworm. Well, we don't know why this Reddit user was digging the earth up, but that's exactly what they found. And if you take a look at the photo carefully, you'll notice that it's not the entire length of the worm. Some part of it is still underground, so it's actually even longer than it appears to be. Here are 2 fun facts about earthworms for you. The first one is they can regenerate to some degree if you cut them in 2. And in some species, you can even end up with 2 worms. And the second one is, the longest earthworm ever recorded was 21 feet in length when naturally extended. So, this guy hadn't even seen the worst. Take a look at these 2 crows standing on a fence. Do you notice that one of them is hiding a bone in its beak? Well, it's kind of spooky. In almost every gothic novel, crows and ravens are bad omens. Well, we all know this is just superstition. But it may actually have originated from the fact that crows are extremely intelligent and cunning. They can recognize individual human faces. They can gossip about you to the other crows. They use tools to solve problems, and they can plan for the future. But the most interesting thing is, they can hold grudges against people who are cruel to them, and even pass those to their offspring. The same goes for people who are kind to them as well. Once they love you, they'll be your friend for a lifetime. So, this Reddit user must have done something right to be rewarded by these crows. Now, let's take a look at the photo that the next Reddit user shared. The tiny pearl-like things you see on the kitchen window are no gemstones, they're actually eggs. But of what exactly? That we may never know, but plenty of Reddit users in the comment section say they might be moth eggs, or stink bug eggs. Either way, it seems like the person who posted the photo needs to do some thorough cleaning to get rid of them. If you're having the same kind of problem at your house, here's a tip on how to get rid of moths. Wash and scrub any areas you found larvae or eggs with a vinegar and water solution. If you have stink bugs, add dish soap to that mixture. Okay, this next photo was not originally shared on Reddit, but it's certainly worth mentioning when it comes to how scary nature can be. The photo is captured by a woman driving home in Minnesota. And let me tell you, this is not photoshopped or edited in any way. I bet it reminds you of that wave scene in Interstellar, right? One Reddit user even called the photo Cloudception. Guess all of us can agree there's some sort of Christopher Nolan movie vibe going on there. The lady who took it, on the other hand, officially named it Ocean in the Sky. Well, that fits too. One meteorologist said the photo is so rare and unique that there are clouds in it that even she herself had never seen before. So it's no wonder it went viral on social media platforms. Let's be honest, each one of us probably drew a lightning bolt on our forehead and pretended to be Harry Potter at least once in our lives. But the next photo one Reddit user shared might change the way you view lightning bolts. The truck you see there, which belongs to their coworker, got struck by lightning. But as you might have guessed, the damage was done by fire. The user says the truck burned for about 10 minutes at a super high temperature before it was put out by fire extinguishers. So, it was not instant damage. To all the comic book fans out there, this is your reminder to not attempt any lightning bolt experiments to become the Flash. This wind turbine looks so sad it's almost heartbreaking to look at, right? Well, the story behind it is upsetting indeed, but in a scary way. The Texan Reddit user who posted this photo explains that the wind turbine was hit by a tornado. But these comments might cheer you up and get your mind off of how frightening tornadoes can be. One Reddit user says the wind turbine looks like its mom told it can't go to the thing. Another one suggests that the tornado took things personally and got revenge on the wind turbine for thinking it can harness the power of the wind. And one other describes the wind turbine to look like a giant robot palm tree. What's worth mentioning here is that it's a good thing the blades of the turbine didn't snap off, because if they had, the consequences would have been much more destructive. This next one might be the weirdest yet. Those toes don't belong to a forest gnome or any other fantastical creature, even though this photo sure looks like it's out of a fairy tale. And I know you're thinking about it, so let me just clarify that it's not a zombie trying to crawl its way out of the ground either. These are actually a type of fungus that is commonly known as dead man's fingers. They can generally be found in forests or any other woodland area, usually growing from the bases of rotting or injured tree stumps and decaying wood. They're fairly common in the UK, Ireland, mainland Europe, and parts of North America. The funny thing about them is the fingers vary in appearance at different stages of their life cycle, so in that manner, it's like a real human being whose body changes as they grow older. You can probably tell by the way it looks that it's very dangerous to eat one. They're very poisonous, so good thing the Reddit user who posted this photo didn't try to get a taste of it. Even Ant-Man couldn't handle this wasp. This Reddit user woke up one day only to find one monstrous wasp in their basement. Look at that giant stinger it has! It almost seems like no beekeeping clothing would protect you from it. This species of wasp is called cicada hawks, which is due to the fact that they hunt cicadas and provision their nests with them. They can be found in the eastern and Midwest US, as well as in southern parts of Mexico and Central America. Female cicada hawks use their stings to paralyze their prey, rather than to defend their nests. Unlike most other wasps and bees, they do not sting unless they're handled roughly. On the other hand, male cicada hawks only fight with other insects and cannot sting. And in case you're wondering, they're generally not aggressive towards humans and usually fly away when swatted at. Phew! The last Reddit user we have for you today used to keep their duck eggs in the pantry. One day, they went and checked the place after hearing a lot of noise coming from there. And what they found was 2 snakes wrapped around the eggs. Well, at least the ones that the snakes didn't eat yet. But the crazy thing is, when the Reddit user got rid of them both and came back, they found another one in there. And this time, there weren't any eggs left. If only they could speak Parseltongue, things would be so much easier.
Planet Earth is full of wondrous phenomena. I mean, can you imagine going for a midnight swim and suddenly finding yourself surrounded by a glowing blue haze? As if there were huge pillars of light coming out of the seabed directly toward the surface. This experience is rare, but it sure is magical. This chemical reaction is known as bioluminescence, and it can happen in different situations. One example is when tiny algae organisms migrate closer to the seashore. When these algae are disturbed, they try to defend themselves by glowing, and just happens to create the most beautiful spectacle. There's another place in the world where you can see a similar thing, but it's caused by a different creature. This place is in New Zealand. Hidden deep within the country's caves live glowworms. They're the larvae of medium-sized narrow beetles that happen to be luminescent. If you're lucky enough to tour these caves, you'll feel like floating inside an underground galaxy. Recently, a video of a super rare phenomenon started circulating on the web. Take a quick look at it and see if you can make out what it is. Okay, it looks like a river, right? But it doesn't look as if any water is flowing there. When the Iraqis first saw this happening, they didn't know what it was, so they just called it the Sand River. It sure was a good guess, but a flowing river of sand would be something too out of this world to be true. It turns out that what these people saw was more or less an optical illusion. It's not sand, but it's not exactly water either. Here's what happened. In arid environments, it's not so uncommon for hail to fall. And in the case of Sand River, what we actually see is thousands and thousands of floating hailstones. Oh, and if you don't know what hail is, it's frozen rain that pours down in the form of small pebbles of ice. That would be something to see. Say you're driving through the countryside and suddenly spot a mushroom-shaped cloud. Uh-oh. Or maybe it's a spaceship of another civilization. You don't quite know what it is, but you do realize that it's huge. Should you continue driving toward it, or should you turn around and drive in the other direction? Well, you should know that a cloud like this indicates a huge thunderstorm is happening inside. And not just a storm, but a mesocyclone. A mesocyclone is a rotating updraft that can span several miles. It's usually accompanied by torrential rains and strong winds. So, if I were you, I'd turn that car around and head in the opposite direction. Whew. You know Thor? I guess he might live inside this next natural phenomenon. Sometimes, when a volcano erupts, this process can be accompanied by huge thunderbolts. Scientists often refer to it as volcanic lightning. They're still debating why this thing occurs. One of their guesses is that when a volcano erupts, it projects positively charged debris into the atmosphere. These charges then react with the already present negative charges, which can produce a bolt of lightning. Cool, huh? The first time anyone witnessed something like this was during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. Nah, it wasn't me. But here I am wondering, were there or were there not any sightings of Thor? Hey, sometimes when I work out too much, I get Thor. Now, all the way down in Senegal, Africa, we'll witness another unbelievable sight. Some 18 miles north of Dakar, the country's capital, there is a unique lake. Arriving there, you might imagine you're walking out of a spaceship and stepping on an unknown planet. After all, have you ever seen real-life pink water before? Lake Retba, or Lac Rose, as the locals call it, has become internationally famous for being vivid pink. And yes, you can swim there if you'd like to. But you should know that the water there is extremely salty. Lake Retba is known to be one of the world's saltiest lakes, with a saline level of over 40%. And in case you're wondering why the water is pink, I assure you this has nothing to do with otherworldly factors. It's actually due to high levels of salt. The algae, Dunaliella salina, is responsible for the pink hue. These algae produce the red pigment that absorbs sunlight, giving the lake its striking pink color. But if you'd like to see the lake at its brightest, you should go there during the dry season, between November and June. During other months, rainwater dilutes the pigment, and the color of the lake becomes less distinct. Lake Retba has turned into a famous international attraction recently because who wouldn't love a picture of them swimming in the pink water? You might have heard of the Aurora Borealis, aka the Northern Lights. This phenomenon has continued to mesmerize scientists and tourists alike ever since it was witnessed for the first time. Now to see it, you have to be pretty lucky. You'll need to travel to the extreme north or south points of our planet. And even then, you'll have to hunt this phenomenon down and hope the sky will put on a show for you. The Aurora Borealis is an extremely rare phenomenon. And although these greenish lights look delicate, they're actually the fruit of a rather rough event. This spectacular light show occurs when energized particles from the sun slam into Earth's upper atmosphere. But it sure is a sight to behold, isn't it? Can you imagine a hill that never stops burning? Located in the Arctic region of Canada, the so-called Smoking Hills are an unmatched sight on our planet. And here, things get a little science fiction-y, since some of the minerals found in these hills have only been discovered outside Earth. on the surface of Mars. The ground of the smoking hills has been releasing smoke for at least a couple hundred years, non-stop. Explorers thought the area was home to an active volcano, but that wasn't the case. As science explains, the soil in the area is formed by sulfur and coal, and when these elements get in contact with oxygen, they spontaneously ignite, releasing constant smoke. I just want to warn you, don't get any touristy ideas. The environment is extremely hostile to people. The smoke is toxic, and its temperatures are dangerously high. So let's move on before smoke gets in our eyes. Hey, there's a song there. Have you ever heard of something called a natural snowball? This can be proof that nature is really perfect. In 2016, the beaches of the Gulf of Aab, a bay in the Arctic Ocean, filled up with rows and rows of giant snowballs. Think balls measuring up to 3 feet across. This is a rare yet beautiful phenomenon that happens when smaller pieces of ice end up getting rolled by strong winds and water. The further they roll, the more ice they gather, and the more polished this ice becomes. Such snowballs end up as giant, perfectly shaped spheres. They look pretty amazing on their own, but hundreds of them together? Wow, think of it. You could have a snowball fight between giants. There are also some snowballs that turn into huge rolling donuts. This shape occurs only in perfect temperature conditions when the snow is both hard and fluffy. A snowball begins rolling down, gathering more and more snow until, suddenly, its middle part collapses. This way, the snowball acquires its donut shape. Does it also taste as good as a donut? No. Now, let's say you go for a hike, but instead of blue skies, you see a huge cloud of fog. Now, this may ruin your photo ops, but there's one thing you can hope for. Foggy days are perfect for a phenomenon known as the fog bow. Its other name is the white rainbow. It occurs because of the tiny size of water droplets that form the fog. They're even smaller than 2/1000ths of an inch. You know, teeny tiny. So instead of a multicolored rainbow, you get a transparent one with red outer edges and a bluish inner border. Cool.
You're dozing off in your window seat on a plane. It's getting dark since it's almost 11 p.m. Suddenly, something wakes you up. You glance out of the window and see a really strange phenomenon. Something that creeps you out. There are bright red, huge flashes illuminating the sky at a distance. They resemble some nightmarish jellyfish. Those are sprites, also called red sprites due to their color. They're also known as cloud-to-space lightning. These varied visual shapes flickering in the night sky are large-scale electric discharges, which is a clever word for a lightning strike. They occur high above thunderstorm clouds at altitudes of 30 to 56 miles. That's why you can see them so well from your plane window. The coolest thing about sprites is that they're positively charged lightning. This is a very rare type that makes up a mere 5% of all lightning strikes. People first spotted this phenomenon in 1886, and it was first photographed in 1989. In 2018, the legendary Niagara Falls, located at the border between New York State and Ontario, Canada, managed to surprise everyone. Tourists who came to admire the roaring waters found the falls frozen. Well, the waterfalls weren't frozen per se. This is impossible for a mass of flowing water that huge, but microscopic water droplets, as well as the mist, formed a crust of ice over the rushing water. It created an illusion that Niagara Falls was frozen all over. In reality, the water kept flowing beneath the ice. Imagine ponds filled with ice-cold water and covered with ice. Easy, huh? And now picture dozens of alligator snouts that are poking out of the ponds, still and frozen in ice. That's what you'd seen if you had visited the swamps of North Carolina at the beginning of 2018. Despite this terrifying picture, the animals were very much alive. That was a very special crocodile way to survive abnormally cold weather. Since their nostrils were above water, the animals could breathe. Meanwhile, their bodies were in a hibernation-like state. It allowed the animals to conserve energy and stay warm. In the winter of 2018, the inhabitants of the Sahara Desert, one of the driest and hottest places on the planet, woke up to discover a thick layer of snow covering the sand. In some places, its depth reached a staggering 15 inches. Meteorologists had an explanation for this exciting phenomenon. They said that cold pools of air combined with the precipitation of the most recent storm resulted in snowfall instead of rain. It happened in June 2009. People in some areas in Japan left their homes after a heavy downpour, only to find fish, frogs, and tadpoles everywhere. Fields, roads, lawns, and house roofs were littered with these creatures. One man even found 13 carp on and around his truck. No one knows for sure where this bizarre rain came from, but the most popular theory is that a powerful water spout picked up the animals. Then it carried them through the upper atmosphere and dropped them on the unsuspecting people below. In Australia, it sometimes rains spiders. That's because these creatures can balloon. It's a highly unusual way of traveling. A spider climbs to the very top of a tall tree or shrub, and then it spins several strands of silk, which then help the spider to be carried away by the wind. It's not easy to spot ballooning spiders, but sometimes when the weather is especially damp and unpleasant, mass ballooning occurs. Millions of spiders set off on a journey to find another place with better conditions. It may look as if it's snowing outside, but no, those are spiders drifting down to the ground. The world's longest lightning storms happen in Venezuela and can last for 9 hours per day. The heart of the storm is over Lake Maracaibo, and the clouds tower way higher than your regular thunderstorm clouds. This natural phenomenon, also known as Catatumbo lightning, occurs during 140 to 160 nights a year and can produce up to 28 lightning strikes per minute. You've probably heard how they say that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. Well, Catatumbo lightning seems not to know about this rule. At least, it doesn't prevent storm clouds from gathering in the very same place year after year. Volcanic tornadoes are possibly one of the most terrifying natural phenomena. When a volcano erupts, it spews red-hot rock and ash high into the atmosphere. And solid lava pieces and hot gases travel down the volcano's slope. When this flow is moving down, some of the trapped gases begin to rise and spin at the same time. They get squeezed by the surrounding air, which makes them spin faster and faster. That's how a volcanic tornado gets born. Luckily, this phenomenon has a very short lifespan. Even though the island of Newfoundland in Canada can't be called the warmest place on Earth, it's still not that cold. But imagine having to shovel snow in front of your house just several days before your summer vacation. Well, that's exactly what happened on the island in June 2018. A cold storm that came from the coast of Newfoundland covered several regions of the islands with a 2-inch layer of snow. On top of that, the temperature broke all the records as well. During a Newfoundland summer, it's about 66 degrees on average, and 90 degrees on a very hot day. But that infamous June impressed people with only 37 degrees Fahrenheit in the morning. Brrr! Morning glory clouds are extremely rare. They look like massive tubes stretching across the sky. They can snake for more than 600 miles, sitting relatively low. Most researchers agree that these clouds appear when an updraft squeezes through the cloud. This creates the signature rolling appearance. The cool air at the back of the cloud makes it sink downward. The best but not the only place to see the morning glory is Australia's Gulf of Carpentaria. If you decide to travel there to see these clouds, choose a period from late September to early November. On March 19, 2018, the inhabitants of Alabama saw huge chunks of ice falling from the sky. It was the infamous hailstorm of Alabama which caused millions of dollars worth of damage. After the hailstorm, the place looked ruined. Broken shop windows, smashed car windshields, broken billboards, and holes in the roofs. But what made researchers really excited was a hailstone found near the town of Cullman, Alabama. This softball-sized monster was more than 5 inches across, setting a new state record. In 2012, the sky over Dorset, England, turned first ominously dark, then yellow. After that, blue gelatinous balls started to fall to the ground. A local man was walking to his garage when he spotted something unusually bright among whitish hailstones. When researchers examined this jelly rain, they found out that the balls were made of the substance used in diapers or potting soil. It's used to absorb liquid. It's still unclear whether the balls fell from the sky or maybe the melting ice made a few already existing crystals expand in the blink of an eye. In March 2018, people in northern Nevada could see the rarest and most bizarre cloud ever, a horseshoe cloud. It sure looks bizarre and kinda scary. But meteorologists know that this interestingly shaped vortex happens when a flat cloud travels over a column of warm, rising air. This air creates the shape and adds some spin to the cloud's movements. Such clouds are very fleeting and usually last for only several minutes. Cylindrical snow donuts occur when a wind gust decides to play snowballs. It starts to roll some snow across a snowy area. If it was a real snowball, it would eventually become too heavy for the wind to move. But the center of a snow donut is hollowed out. This happens because its inner layer is too thin and gets blown away when the donut is formed. This makes it lighter than a regular snowball. That's why it also rolls further. Unfortunately, you can't just go and find snow donuts. They're rare because they appear in very precise conditions. This is John. John seems to attract all kinds of bad weather and natural disasters wherever he goes. See for yourself. One day, John notices his dog is restless. The pooch keeps scratching the entrance door and wandering around the house. He even tries to hide in the corner, howling and barking. When some mugs start to clink in your cupboard, John realizes what it means. The noise is produced by foreshocks, mini earthquakes leading up to the main event. Earthquakes often happen in clusters. After a few weak quakes, a much bigger one is likely to be on the way. Sometime before the disaster strikes, people might notice bizarre blue lights. Some of them seem to be coming out of the ground. Others are hovering in the air. These are earthquake lights. They may appear days or mere seconds before the ground starts shaking. Now, John is walking along the ocean shore. Suddenly, he sees the water retreat from the beach. Really, really fast. Uh-oh. John, run away as quickly as you can and find some high ground. A tsunami is coming. And your life might depend on how fast you react. If John spots a bizarre and unexpected rise in sea level, it can be another sign of an approaching tsunami. This happens in 40% of cases. The incoming water is the first tsunami wave. The second one, way larger, will come in about 10 minutes. John can also notice seawater bubbling, swirling, and creating bizarre patterns. It's another sure sign a tsunami is near. John feels there's something strange about the sun. Through his special super dark sunglasses, he sees that there's some uneven flares around the star's contour. If these bizarre rays are accompanied by auroras all over the world, they're a sign of a solar storm. Such storms are usually caused by disturbances in the sun's magnetic field. In this case, the bursts of gas and radiation on the surface of the sun get so massive and powerful that they can even reach our planet. Luckily, solar storms aren't really dangerous for people, but they can mess with electricity and even cause blackouts. The sky over John's head is darkening and turning ominously green. Something hits him on the forehead. Ouch! He picks up the offending object. It's a hailstone, but it's not that cold outside, and it's not raining. Soon, he hears some noise. It's approaching rapidly and turns into a loud roar. It sounds as if a freight train is moving towards him, but it's not a train. It's a tornado. The funnel isn't visible behind a cloud of debris, but John can't mistake this rotating column of air for anything else. Are you on the road, John? Then get as far away from your car as you can. Fast! Find a ditch, lie down in it, and cover your head. Oh, you're inside? Then get away from the windows and hide underground if possible. And please, John, be very careful if you spot some conically shaped clouds. Those mean severe storms. And if you notice that such a cloud starts spinning around, immediately search for shelter. The cloud is transitioning into a tornado right in front of your eyes. On the bright side, John should only worry about warm conical clouds. Cold ones are totally harmless. The only problem is to figure out the temperature of the cloud he sees. Duh! Ah, look, John just spotted some weirdly shaped trees. They look like the letter J and grow on a slope. It means the ground under John's feet is likely to be unstable. If he keeps wandering around, it can cause a bad landslide. Square waves appear when two different wave patterns crash into each other. This phenomenon does look kinda awesome. No, don't go into the water, John. Keep watching it from the shore. Cross currents in that spot can easily pull even a skilled swimmer under the surface. John keeps walking along the shore. At one point, he sees wild, choppy waves carrying ocean debris and seaweed. This time, he stays out of the water. He knows it can be a sign of a strong rip current. It can carry a swimmer far away into the ocean. How about a walk in the park? John likes this idea. The sun is shining and the sky is so blue and beautiful. Suddenly, he spots a rapidly growing vertical cloud. At first, it looks bright white. But as it approaches, alarmingly fast, it becomes dense and inky. The sky is darkening. It's getting windy. That's when the guy notices that his hair stands on end. It's his cue that he's about to get hit by lightning. At this very moment, positive charges are rising through his body. They're reaching towards the negatively charged part of the storm. If he doesn't react fast, these charges will meet. There's nowhere to hide, so John should crouch down and try to make himself smaller than the objects around him. Oh no. John, don't lie down on the ground. It may be damp and thus a great conductor of electricity. There are other signs that scream danger during a lightning storm. John's palms may begin to sweat. He might hear bizarre crackling and buzzing sounds coming from metal objects nearby. His skin can start tingling. There might be a strange metallic taste in his mouth. Plus, John is likely to smell chlorine. That's how ozone smells. Electrical charges split the molecules of nitrogen and oxygen, which are the main gases making up the atmosphere, into separate atoms. When these atoms come together again, some of them produce molecules made up of 3 oxygen atoms. That's ozone. We can smell it during a thunderstorm because downdrafts bring this gas from high altitudes to your level. Some bugs can feel a storm coming. They get ready for a natural disaster by freezing. So, when John notices that insects around him look drowsy, he knows to get ready. Oh, and bees can predict heavy rainstorms. These critters begin to work much harder the day before it starts raining. While walking next to the river during a period of heavy rains, John hears a roaring sound. He feels paralyzed with fear. It's likely to be a flash flood moving in his direction. Indeed, he soon sees debris coming down with the flow. The water is rapidly changing its color, becoming muddier and darker. Flash floods are very, very dangerous. Take care of your safety immediately, John. Another day, John sees a spectacular wall cloud. It seems to be stretching for up to 5 miles. In the best case scenario, it's just a severe storm coming. But if the wall cloud begins to move in a circle, it's a sure sign of a tornado. John is walking across a snowfield in the mountains, listening to the sounds the ice under his feet makes. The noise is kinda hollow. Quickly check whether there are cracks around your footprints, John. If so, the chances are an avalanche is about to happen. Soon, John sees an avalanche moving in his direction. He does his best to get off the slope. In most cases, he could probably outrun it by heading downhill and then veering sideways, but not this time. He realizes he doesn't have enough time and heads for the nearest tree. If John keeps holding on to it really tightly, the avalanche might not pull him along. But if this doesn't work, he should try to swim up to the snow's surface while the avalanche is still moving. On a pretty nice summer evening, John notices leaves with soft stems droop all of a sudden. It might be because of an upcoming storm. Right before extreme weather arrives, the air usually becomes more humid. Leaves also get damp and heavy, and the wind easily flips them over. John lives in a pretty old house and is used to having cracks in the interior walls, but one day, he notices that some of them have widened. And look, there are a few new ones. It's an alarm bell. He lives in an area with loads of limestone, so new cracks can mean a sinkhole is about to open next to his house. John is hurrying home, trying not to waste time admiring shelf clouds. They look like something from a sci-fi movie. They form when warm and moist air gets caught in a thunderstorm updraft. and these ominous clouds most often mean a storm is coming.
You're hiking in the wilderness, looking for a safe spot to set up camp. All you can hear are leaves and branches crackling under your footsteps. Some squirrels are running up a tree over there, but suddenly, something unexpected happens. You notice something weird in the distance in between the trees. It kind of looks like a concrete structure of some kind. Weird. At this point, you're at least 20 miles deep into the woods, and there are no nearby towns or villages, as far as you know. So you decide to go off the trail with your friends to get a closer look. But as you get nearer, you realize that it's leading to nowhere. What's it doing here in the middle of literally nowhere? And it doesn't even lead to anything. You put on your Sherlock Holmes cap and investigate. So, maybe there used to be an old house or mansion here that collapsed over the years, and the only thing left is a staircase? But, weirdly enough, after circling the bizarre structure, you realize there's no trace of any ruins or even foundations. It's like someone just sliced a staircase off their house, cake style, and plopped it here for no reason. Okay? You and your friends aren't really into getting a whole lot closer. Something feels wrong. The longer you look at this weird structure, the more you feel a super creepy presence. Something tells you you should probably leave the area as fast as possible. As weird as this sounds, discoveries of random staircases, illogically found in the woods, are surprisingly common. Some are made of wood, others of brick or stone. Some look ancient, while others look like they were finished yesterday. The one thing they all have in common, they all lead to absolutely nowhere, and they're all found in super mysterious locations. One of the most famous ones is in Chesterfield, New Hampshire. A long, medieval-looking staircase made of stones with Roman arches in the middle of the woods. It's believed to have been part of Madame Antoinette Sherry's castle. She was a big singer back in Paris. The castle dates back about 100 years, and it was later discovered again in 1962. This time, there was nothing but a staircase. Another mysterious ancient staircase dates back to 9,000 years ago. It's in a forest in Italy. It looks like a series of stairs that lead to a tiny platform at the top. Now, why go through all the trouble of building the thing if it leads to nowhere? Well, some scientists think it could have been some sort of ritual tower, but your guess is as good as theirs. There's an anomaly in the Indian Ocean known as the Indian Ocean Geoid Low, or IOGL. It produces the largest distorting natural gravitational force in the world. Heavy mineral deposits, many deep-sea trenches, and magma reservoirs disturb the magnetic field in this area. Earth's gravity changes in different places around the planet. It allows researchers to look for patterns and figure out what's happening beneath the surface. Higher gravity fields usually mean denser materials below, and vice versa. Some scientists believe that the anomaly might be a dent in the planet's mantle that is working its way up to the crust. The Niihau Island actually rejects the fruits of today's advancements. There are no cars in sight since the locals get around on foot or by bicycles. No wonder their legs have great definition. They thrive without running water, internet, or shops. The only school on the entire island is powered by solar energy with a backup generator. And what's awesome is that it's the only school in the state that's powered by the sun. Being a resident of the island, the local explains some ground rules the permanent residents must abide by. If they do break these rules, they can be evicted. Now, not far from Bangkok, in northeastern Thailand, there's a 75-million-year-old rock formation. These rocks look like three whales swimming together. The beautiful design created by nature became known as Three Whales Rock. Millions of years ago, this area was just a desert, but the land was changing. Gradually, sandstone got pulled apart by the movements of tectonic plates and erosion. That's how these spectacular formations were created. If you decide to explore the system of trails around Three Whales Rock, you'll find waterfalls and an abundance of fauna and flora there. Located on Gamal and Gaiden peninsulas, These expansive pit holes were discovered in 2014. They seem to be still changing and evolving. The pits grow wider and people find them more often. Of course, there's no shortage of theories about how they appeared. Suggestions range from meteorite impacts to the activity of other civilizations. But the most common explanation is that methane gas reacted to water molecules after the planet's permafrost started to melt. This resulted in bubbles of methane bursting through the ice. The craters could be thousands of years old, but nobody knows for sure. You're driving to the state of New Mexico, to the small town of Taos. 2% of the locals hear a strange buzzing in the air every day. Some residents believe the sound is somehow connected with technologies used by guests from other galaxies. Also, there is a theory that something sinister lives in the town. They say Taos is cursed. An evil spirit or a phantom punishes people for something their ancestors did in the past. Scientists still can't explain the nature of this sound. Another theory says it's caused by unusual acoustics of the location, while others think the buzzing is a hallucination. Some can hear it because everybody talks about something, and our minds create an illusion of the sound that doesn't really exist. The sound isn't the same for everyone either. For some, it's a low hum. For others, it's more of a buzzing sound. But this is not the only place where you can hear the strange noises. It's called the hum, and people worldwide claim to have heard it. Some dwellers of a small village in Scotland describe it as a low, thick hum, while some residents of Florida heard a similar sound too. It's not exactly known where this phenomenon appeared, but the first time the media started talking about it was in the 1970s in England. Also, there are written records of a mysterious buzzing dating back almost 200 years. According to some estimates, only about 2% of people on the planet can hear the hum. Perhaps their ears pick up some low-frequency waves, or the reason is something else entirely. Maybe, just maybe, they hear humming because the person doing it doesn't know the words to the song. Yeah, that joke is also 200 years old. A volcano in Indonesia spews bright blue lava and produces electric blue and purple flames. This phenomenon occurs because the volcano has some of the highest levels of sulfur in the world. You can also know you're near it by its foul stench. But I digress. And when sulfuric gases interact with scorching hot air and get lit by the molten lava, they turn blue. You can also find the world's largest acid lake inside this crater. Yup, it's a real stinker. Underwater rivers and lakes are called brine pools for a reason. High salinity makes the water in them denser than the seawater around. That's why it sinks to the bottom, forming rivers and lakes. Those have waves of their own, and these waves can sometimes lap up against the shorelines. If you went down there in a submarine, it would easily float on the surface of a brine pool. But without a submarine, swimming in such a lake would be too risky. They contain too much toxic methane and hydrogen sulfide. Yeah, I'd pass on that too. But hey, be my guest. Cave of Crystals in Mexico is home to the world's most unique crystal formations. Thanks to super rare conditions in the cave, crystals there grow to unbelievable sizes. The air inside is incredibly humid. The water contains tons of minerals that boost the growth of the milky white giants. Some of them are longer than telephone poles. Cylindrical snow donuts occur when a wind gust starts to roll some snow across a snowy area, as if making a snowball. If it was a real thing, it would eventually become too heavy for the wind to move. But a snow donut's center is hollowed out. This happens because its inner layer is too thin and is blown away when the donut is formed. This makes the thing lighter than a snowball. That's also why it rolls further. Unfortunately, snow donuts are rare because they need very precise conditions to appear. The Danakil Depression in Ethiopia is probably one of the most bizarre-looking places you'll ever see. It's dotted with neon-colored hot springs, lava pools, and vast salt flats. You've got to be especially careful there. Toxic gases are swirling over hydrothermal fields, and many pools are super acidic. So, don't go swimming. Until at least 30 minutes after lunch. Just kidding. And finally, there's nothing mysterious about 28,000 rubber ducks found in the sea in 1992. That's when a ship transporting bath toys got lost in the ocean while traveling from Hong Kong to the U.S. Some of these ducks are still floating in the ocean several decades later. They've been spotted in South America, Alaska, Hawaii, and even Australia. And they make bath time lots of fun. Ooh, rubber ducky. You're in the Atacama Desert in northern Chile, one of the driest places on Earth. But this desert has a beautiful secret. Every 3 to 5 years, flowers pop up out of nowhere. It's so famous, it's also called the flowering desert. Seeds lie around in the ground just waiting for some rain. When the desert gets enough water, about 200 types of flowers sprout up. The yellow sands of the Atacama turn purple, white, green, and even pink. Another mystical phenomenon that can be seen in the desert is called a sand waterfall. When the wind brings a lot of sand to the edge of the canyon, it begins to fall down. Now amplify this effect 100 times and you get a sand waterfall in Saudi Arabia. It really is like Niagara Falls, only there's not a drop of water. The locals say this phenomenon warns of an impending sandstorm. Fairy rings, also known as elf rings or pixie rings, are mysterious circles of mushrooms that appear in grasslands and forested areas. There's a lot of debate about why these fairy rings form a nearly perfect circle. Some superstitions claim that fairy dances would burn the ground, causing mushrooms to rapidly grow. In southern India, between July and September 2001, people witnessed one of the strangest weather phenomena in recorded history. The rain was red. What many would have thought to be a typical rainstorm left them shocked. The color was bright enough to stain clothes. There were other colors too, such as green, yellow, brown, and even black. In the middle of a monsoon, red rain started to fall, and so did periodically for several weeks. Researchers have found this unusual rain is stained either by dust or algae, so don't try to catch any on your tongue. Scientists aren't entirely sure how the algae got all the way up there. This does make events like this a little unsettling. Now, people who live in rural central Norway over the Hessdalen Valley can often witness floating lights of white, yellow, and red cross the sky. The lights appear both at day and night, and once back in the 80s, the 1980s, they were spotted 15 to 20 times in a single week. The Hessdalen lights can last just a few seconds, but sometimes they can last more than an hour. The lights move, seeming to float or even sway around. Some scientists believe that the reason for these lights is due to ionized iron dust. Others say it's a combination that includes sodium, oxygen, and hydrogen. Many people claim they're just misidentified aircrafts. Norway! Snow donuts are one of the rarest meteorological sights to see, with perfect weather conditions needed just to create them. Found in any snow-covered mountain area, like the Rocky Mountains, the wind, temperature, snow, ice, and moisture all have to work together for us to see these phenomenal rings. A thin layer of wet snow on the ground. Under that layer, ice or powdered snow. Then, a strong enough breeze to roll the donut down a hill, just like a snowball. Once it stops rolling, it can be the size of a baseball or as large as a car tire. It all depends on how strong the wind is. A newly formed snow donut won't stay around for very long, so hurry up with that camera and watch your head. Can you believe there's another place on Earth with its own ecosystem and atmosphere, similar to another planet? Well, start believing. Movil Cave, located in southeastern Romania, remained closed in complete darkness for a whopping 5.5 million years. It wasn't until workers discovered the cave, when they were looking for a place to build, that anyone learned about it. Scientists carved out an opening to the cave and found that a completely sustained ecosystem was thriving inside. As a pathway was carved through the rock past numerous tunnels, scientists found a lake of sulfuric water that stank like rotten eggs. The air was filled with hydrogen sulfide and had 100 times more carbon dioxide than Earth's atmosphere contains. Needless to say, this air is completely toxic. What's even crazier is that a whole ecosystem has been existing in this cave, with 33 species that can't be found anywhere else on Earth. This cave gives us a glimpse of what could possibly exist on other planets with completely different atmospheres. How it managed to exist on Earth all this time without anyone knowing is rather unbelievable, isn't it? Now, check these trees out. They're called Indian rubber trees. Their strong roots grow not underground, but on the surface. With the help of special frames and fasteners, people have learned to control how these roots grow. Let's say a tree is next to a small pit. You need to make a bridge from one end of this pit to the other. You direct the growing tree roots in the needed direction. Over time, the roots penetrate the ground and strengthen under endless downpours. It takes about 15 years to create one bridge. Here's another amazing tree called the Tree of Life. It grows in Bahrain's desert. The tree has been standing on top of this sandy hill for more than 400 years, surrounded by miles of sand. It's extremely hot here, and there's no moisture. But despite this, the tree has green leaves, and it continues to grow. So far, scientists haven't figured out yet how the tree gets moisture and nutrients. There are only places with oil deposits around. Locals think the tree is sacred. After all, it demonstrates the magic of life and the power of nature. Some experts are sure it's all about the roots. They go so deep that they can reach underground sources of water. So, there you are. You've been driving for hours through the night. You didn't have any chance to sleep, so your mind is hanging by a thread. You stop the car and go out to stretch your limbs. And then you look up into the sky and see a beautiful sunrise. Whoa, wait. There are 3 suns in the sky. You rub your eyes, but nope, there's still 3 bright stars in the sky. No, our home star hasn't been torn into 3 pieces, nor has it been visited by 2 other stars. This is called a sundog. It occurs mostly during severe frosts. Small ice crystals in the sky bend the light. As a result, you may see 3 bright spots in the sky instead of just 1. This phenomenon is officially called a halo. Usually it's just a circle around the sun. You can even see a halo at night, too. Just look at a street lamp and you'll see a bright circle around it. Sometimes a halo can take on a fancier shape. If there's a lot of ice in the air, the light is warped even more. Just like in a room with a dozen mirrors. Then the halo can take on the shape of a human eye. Because of this phenomenon, a false dawn can also occur. While you're looking at the horizon, the dawn begins and the edge of the sun appears. A little bit more and wait, the sun starts to just dissolve in the sky. After a few moments, it's dark again. And only a minute later, the real sun shows its face. It was the same light curvature effect you saw before with the 3 suns. Only now, the light is curved vertically, not horizontally. And instead of the real sun, its reflection in ice crystals in the sky appeared. But the sunrise with 3 stars on the horizon is actually real. Not on Earth, though, but 340 light-years away. There's a star system at the center of which lurks a star almost twice the size of the sun. And there are 2 smaller stars orbiting around this giant. This strange world has a planet, too. Sunsets and dawns there really happen with 3 stars. If you brought your significant other to a park bench to watch a sunset here, your date would go just fine, whatever that means. And since we're talking about the most baffling natural phenomena, it would be a crime not to mention snow in a desert. Yep, in the winter of 2018, the inhabitants of the Sahara Desert, one of the driest and hottest places on this planet, woke up to discover a thick blanket of snow covering the sand. In some places, the layer of snow enveloping the dunes reached a staggering 15 inches. Meteorologists, however, had an explanation for this exciting phenomenon. They stated that cold pools of air, combined with the precipitation from the most recent storm, resulted in a snowfall instead of rain. So, what do you do in that case? Build snow camels? 1 hump or 2.
You feel some rumbling from below. No, it's not your tummy. It's low and ominous. You look up and see strange lights hanging above the ground. They look like shimmering balls of light hovering high up in the sky. Your throat goes dry and you gulp. That's what they call the earthquake lights. This phenomenon is poorly understood, but witnesses say they've seen it in different shapes and sizes. It could be in the form of light balls, sheet lightning, streamers, and a steady glow in the sky. Soon after, a strong earthquake follows. Scientists can't explain why those lights appear, and they don't always do either. Some believe that's a reaction of underground gases released into the atmosphere. Sure enough, an earthquake begins. But lucky you, it's not as strong as you expected. The ground is shaking, but you even manage to keep your balance. It stops as abruptly as it began, and you walk home. On the way home, you see a flash and hear a whip crack. Lightning has struck a lone tree near where you just stood. It's caught on fire, and there's a column of flames rising to the sky. Still no rain, and the pillar becomes taller and taller. Have you heard of such a thing as a fire tornado? These phenomena occur when the wind is caught in a circle close to the ground because of the difference in air pressure. Such mini tornadoes are usually easy to notice. Small rubble, dust, sand, and leaves rise into the air and start flying in rapid circles. But then, if there's a source of fire nearby, the funnel can catch it and blow it stronger, like bellows. The flames go round and round, reaching ever higher and eventually creating a swirling, blazing tower. Luckily, fire tornadoes are short-lived and don't normally cause much damage. But don't try to hide from the storm under that tree. You can find this unusual plant in Florida and in some parts of the Caribbean coast. Externally, it doesn't look special at all. A gray trunk, green leaves, and fruit similar to small apples. What you must remember is never to pluck these apples and never stand next to the tree, especially if it's raining. This is the manchineel tree, which is considered the most dangerous in the world. Its trunk, bark, branches, and fruit contain poisonous juice. One drop of this corrosive acidic liquid can harm your skin a lot. The tree can secrete this juice, and if you accidentally touch it, you risk burning your hand. When it rains, water droplets fall on the tree and mix with the poison. Water can also bounce off the bark and get on your skin. That's why you shouldn't stand nearby either. There are almost no other shrubs or mushrooms growing around. Animals avoid these trees, and people don't chop them and don't pluck the fruit. You can't make a bonfire from their branches. Burning wood emits poisonous smoke that can damage your eyes. Locals know this tree well, but tourists and travelers might accidentally get harmed. That's why most manchineel trees are marked with paint or have a warning sign. In western Venezuela, locals living close to the Catatumbo River aren't afraid of lightning because they see it almost every single night. It starts at around 7 o'clock and doesn't stop until dawn. The everlasting Catatumbo lightning did once stop for a few months, from January to March 2010. It was probably due to drought, or maybe the charge ran out. In 1991, a scientist suggested that the phenomenon happens because of cold and warm air currents meeting in the area. Another theory is that the lightning could be due to the presence of uranium in the bedrock. Not all lightning happens inside clouds. There's a rare phenomenon called a dirty thunderstorm. The lightning happens above a volcano. The most famous is in Japan. It erupts almost every day and spits black clouds high into the air. So it's super scary volcano clouds plus lightning. Whoa! Regular lightning happens during a storm when ice crystals bump into each other. In a dirty thunderstorm, bits of volcanic ash collide, create friction, and spark up the sky. In the hottest and one of the driest places on Earth, Africa's Danakil Desert, temperatures often rise above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The out-of-this-world landscape has many active volcanoes and geysers that spit out toxic gases like chlorine and sulfur. The vibrantly green, electric blue, and yellow waters are all rain and seawater warmed up by magma. One wrong step here, and you'd be gone for good. This happened in June 2009. People in certain areas in Japan left their homes after a heavy downpour, only to find fish, frogs, and tadpoles everywhere. Fields, roads, lawns, and rooftops were littered with these aquatic creatures. One man was shocked to see 13 carp on and around his truck. Apparently, he stopped to count them. No one knows for sure where the bizarre rain came from, but the most popular theory claims that a powerful water spout picked up all these creatures. Then it carried them through the upper atmosphere and dropped the animals on the unsuspecting people below. And now, welcome to Abraham Lake in Canada. It's completely frozen. You step onto the transparent ice and look down at what lies beneath. No fish, just some mysterious frozen bubbles. They look like small clouds frozen in ice, or jellyfish who forgot to pack a winter jacket. There are thousands of these little bubbles made up of methane. But don't try to dig a hole in the ice to touch it. Methane is highly flammable. It's created by methane-producing bacteria that eats leaves, grass, insects, or any other organic stuff that gets into the lake. When the methane touches the frozen water, it turns into tens of thousands of frozen little balls. When the ice melts, they burst open and sizzle. Similar lakes can be found near some shores of the Arctic Ocean. There, the size of the bubbles can reach several times the size of hot air balloons. Beautiful for sure, but not exactly safe. The next shocking lake is in Indonesia, the island of Java. You come to a majestic volcano, overgrown with grass and trees. The volcano seems to be asleep, but smoke is pouring out of it. You climb to the summit. Exhausted, tired, sweaty, you're ready to cool off. Nice work, you made it to the top. You look into the mouth of the volcano. No boiling lava, just a beautiful, bright, turquoise lake down there. It looks like an oasis. Perfect time for a refreshing dip. You run down and get ready to jump in. But that's not water, that's acid! Sulfurous gases get into the lake from under the volcano. The lake itself is full of metals. When the gases touch them, they form that beautiful turquoise water. Acid. Better head back to the nearest village, rest, and come back at night when it's cooler. In the dark, the lake seems to glow. Right above it, you see light-filled, exploding little clouds. The sulfurous gases rise out of the lake, combine with the air, and flash bright blue. Still, don't get too close. The sea turns sinister red, and no living being can survive in it. Must be some dark magic. In fact, it's tiny algae that spread uncontrollably, giving the water this specific tint called the red tide. They have toxins that destroy sea mammals, birds, and turtles, as well as creatures that feed on them. For humans, contact with it ends in breathing problems or seafood poisoning. Sometimes even huge ships sink in the open seas for no visible reason. That reason is often the pockets of bubbles that underwater volcanoes produce even while they're sleeping. Those productive magma factories are hidden under 8,500 feet of water. When they wake up, they act just like land volcanoes, and they can cause destructive tsunamis. This tree looks like a bottle. No wonder it's called the bottle tree. It grows in Namibia and attracts many tourists. But don't get too close to the tree because it's one of the most dangerous on Earth. Milky juice flows inside the trunk. It's highly toxic to the human body. On the bright side though, the trees have beautiful pink-white leaves with a red core. There's a tree growing in Western Australia that was once used as a prison. A cell for criminals existed inside the Boab prison tree for a long time. People were usually kept there temporarily, just for one night. After that, they were taken to their final destination. The prison was built more than 1,500 years ago and has been perfectly preserved to this day. Tourists visiting this place can sneak a peek inside.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends.